Looking all statistics with some prime analytics, we got ourselves a group of funky fresh critics. Home runs, some free throws, goals, fights, and touchdowns. Pocket says it all, so it's best you stick around. Analyzing this, analyzing that, putting a perspective on every single step. Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started, it's 1st and 15.
And hello and welcome to WBTA Studios on the corner of Main and Center in Batavia, New York. My name's Pete Zehler alongside Tylor Klien, Mike Rose. We are here with 1st and 15. If you're not familiar with the show, well, it's probably because the show hasn't been on the air in like 6 or 7 years. This is a show that we originally did in college back at GCC back in the day. At GCC, it centered more on sports in general, I would say. This is kind of our revitalization of it here on WBTA. It's going to be more NFL-centered here. I mean, maybe we'll venture into other sports at some point, but starting out here, this is going to be more NFL-centered. Just to give you kind of an introduction to everyone, I'm Pete Zehler. I'm the director of sports here at WBTA. We got Mike Rose. He is the sports editor at the Batavia Daily News, Livingston County News. And we got Tylor Klien, who is a NFL analyst here on WBTA. So that is kind of the whole gang here. And the premise of the show, just giving you a little introduction since this is the first one we're doing here in a long time. Just going to be talking about NFL-related things. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the NFL draft. In the coming weeks, we're going to be kind of previewing different teams, different divisions, their seasons coming up. And as we get into the NFL season, obviously we'll be talking about the bigger news stories, everything that's happening in the NFL. So that is essentially the premise of 1st and 15 here. And I think we're ready to get it underway here a little bit. And we're going to talk about the draft today, and we're going to start out with the biggest story of the draft. That is the number 1 overall pick. By the way, I feel like I should start this show by mentioning, too, that we got an array of fans here, right? We're in Batavia, New York. You might think this is a bunch of Bills fans on the show. You'd be wrong. I am the only Bills fan on this show. Mike Rose is a Minnesota Vikings fan. Tylor Klien is a Las Vegas Raiders fan, so he is a fan of the team that actually had the number 1 overall pick. And we're going to talk about that number 1 overall pick now, Fernando Mendoza. The Indiana quarterback, obviously, he kind of came out of nowhere last year, was a big transfer to Indiana, and just played absolutely out of his gourd last year to skyrocket. In a weaker draft to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. When you talk about Mendoza, you're not talking about a guy with a rocket arm, but you're talking about a guy that has the prototypical size, a very accurate quarterback, a highly intelligent quarterback, and a guy that I think his intangibles and his mental traits are kind of what made him rise up the draft board more. I mean, he's 6'5". He does have good physical traits. I'm not trying to downplay that, and he's fairly mobile too. But just it doesn't have the biggest arm, but obviously a lot of it is the mental aspect with Fernando Mendoza. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Rose from the Batavia Daily News, who was actually at the draft, to kind of give us his take here on Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, I was at the Bills draft room, I should say, not in Pittsburgh at the draft. But by the way, blowing up my spot on the Bills beat here, saying that I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. But that's
my bad.
Blowing up my spot. I don't try to publicize that. I pretend like I'm just actually a Bills fan. Nobody has to know. But
known Bills fan Mike Rose.
Known Bills fan Mike Rose. Yes, that's me. Well, we're talking about Mendoza. Obviously, you mentioned it. He's got the size, but I think the biggest thing with him is kind of the mental aspect, the way he carries himself, that leadership aspect is, I think, the biggest thing that he brings to the table for a Raiders team that has a sneaky good kind of skill group with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers. And you add in a guy like that, I think he's a culture changer just in the way he goes about his business, the way he carries himself. And if you look at the numbers last year, I mean, they're ridiculous. He throws 41 touchdowns. He completes 72% of his passes. They win the national championship. He wins the Heisman. You can't really draw it up much better if you're talking about a way to go out. And I think, it's worth noting, you mentioned kind of coming out of nowhere, but he was a, 68% completion guy a couple of years ago. So this is a guy who, had some skills, just maybe wasn't in the best position to succeed at Cal with the kind of guys they were surrounding him with. And he just kind of took over at Indiana, did an unbelievable job. And I think he's going to walk in day one and be a difference maker for the Raiders. And I said this the other day, maybe it's stepping out a little bit. I think the Raiders could compete for, second place in that division potentially this year. I don't know. I think they got a real shot to be a lot more competitive than people think.
Now, you said day one. So now do you think Mendoza starts day one, or what do you think? Do you think it's Kirk Cousins?
Out of your mind if you're starting Kirk Cousins day one. No shade to Kirk Cousins. He's had a great career. the greatest bag snatcher in the history of professional football.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
that man should not be starting football games in the year 2026.
Well, let me kind of transition to this too, Mike. So, why, if you're the Raiders, go out and get a guy like Kirk Cousins if you don't plan on starting him day one? And just to kind of expand on that too, just a little side comment here, but Kirk Cousins and Fernando Mendoza, maybe like the least problematic quarterback room you could possibly have in the city of Las Vegas. Like, those guys, if any stories came out about them that were crazy, my mind would be blown. But
They're the same person.
yeah, the perfect mentor for Fernando Mendoza is probably Kirk Cousins. But so Mike, you feel pretty confident that Mendoza is a day one starter in Vegas?
I do, and I think the reason you go out and get Kirk Cousins is, I think, exactly what you guys just said. He is like a Fernando Mendoza clone almost in terms of personality and the way they go about their business. And I think he's the perfect kind of guy to come in and teach Mendoza how to be a pro. He's not going to, throw a big stink if he's not the starter. I think the Raiders did a much better job of communicating with him the situation than Atlanta did when they threw the Michael Penix kind of gotcha pick in the first round on Cousins a couple of years ago. So I think everyone kind of knows where they're going with this. And I believe if you're the Raiders, you start Mendoza day one. And, the other thing is, this is a business. We got to sell tickets. You're not selling tickets, Kirk Cousins week one. People want to see a number one pick play.
Yeah.
That's a fair
now,
point.
I do have a stat, and it maybe it's a little bit overblown, but it's definitely something to kind of keep your mind open to. Mendoza didn't really run much of a pro-style offense in the NFL, and maybe a lot of that stuff's overrated, but Clint Kubiak, 51% of his snaps are under center, which is the most of any OC since 2001. Fernando Mendoza only took 5 snaps under center in his entire college career. So listen, if you want to go more of, is he ready to run a pro-style offense? Is he ready to kind of lead this offense? Kirk Cousins, he's got the history with Clint Kubiak. Day one he can go in. I think that there's a chance that they go in day one, and Kirk Cousins is the guy, mainly because they just feel that Fernando Mendoza isn't ready to run that pro offense. And there is absolutely no rush. I think if you're the Raiders, there's no rush. You got a really young team, especially at the skill positions. The wide receiver room is really young.
So let me twist this a little bit to you, Tyler. And I will preface this by saying Tyler has been about taking it slow with Fernando Mendoza since the start. He wants him to take him slow with Fernando Mendoza, and I can understand that. But when I think of playing under center in the NFL, I think of 12 personnel. You have 2 tight ends on the field, a running back, and a team with the Raiders with a running back like Ashton Genty. You're going to have Brock Bowers on one side, Michael Mayer on the other side, who's sneakily a very good number 2 tight end. And you just invested heavily in your offensive line, getting arguably the best center in the NFL in Tyler Linderbaum. You invested in the draft in that O-line. You're getting Colton Miller back healthy this year. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here, Tyler, is maybe the Raiders have enough – those players, you put them around Fernando Mendoza. I mean, yes, he hasn't played a ton under center, but with that cast of characters around him, I mean, he'd be pretty well set to go with those guys.
I'm not sold on the cast of characters as much. I mean, Brock Bowers is going back to his college days, has had issues, injury, like staying on the field. He was hurt last year. I do like the Jalen Naylor signing. I think that was kind of like the only that is their only addition to the wide receiver room. Trey Tucker I like. Dante Thornton I like. He's got speed. Jack Besh they drafted in the second round. So like I said, they're young at that position. They just drafted a running back in the 4th round, Mike Washington. So again, they're just a really young team, and I just feel like there's just no need to go in day one and just put Mendoza in a spot where it's like, do you think these guys around him can elevate him? No. Do you think he can elevate the guys around him? No. And John Spytek and Clint Kubiak have both said they think the best thing for a rookie quarterback is to not start day one. I mean, so more coming from the direct source, the general manager and the head coach, and they kind of proved it going out and getting Kirk Cousins. So,
all right, Mike, you got any take on that?
I mean, I think we got a lot of smart guys in that room. Kubiak's a smart guy. Mendoza's a smart kid. Kirk Cousins a smart guy.
Tom Brady.
there's a lot of people who know what they're doing in there, and I think there's too many smart people in that room for you to convince me that they can't get Fernando Mendoza ready to start the first game of the season and run a pro style offense. And I also will say I am a major believer in the idea that if you have a rookie quarterback and you believe in the guy, you think this is our guy, you have to take advantage of those rookie contract years while you have them. And I don't think it does anybody any good to wait a year and the reality is like he's going to play this year no matter what happens.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I do
like,
agree. He will play
I've
at some
understood
point.
the idea of like, let's start Kirk Cousins for 3 games. Like, I just don't see the point. Get him out there, get him the reps. We've seen this with, Baker Mayfield not starting right away or a Justin Herbert not starting right away. It made zero difference for those guys to sit those 2 games or 3 games or whatever they ended up sitting. Ironically, both those guys sat behind Tyrod Taylor, I'm now realizing. But, I just don't really see the point in what you're going to get out of that extra week or two before you have fans with signs cheering for Mendoza at every game because the Raiders start 0-2 because Kirk Cousins is pushing 40 and is throwing to, Dante Thornton and Jack Bash.
Like Pat Mahomes sat out the entire first season, but that was also a much different scenario.
Yeah.
Like Alex Smith was a lot more.
Like that was a playoff.
Yeah, that was a playoff.
You know what I mean?
Like, that
Like
was a team that actually had aspirations of
he
going
wasn't the
somewhere.
number
The Raiders
one
don't.
pick.
The Raiders don't. Yeah.
Well, I guess I want to get to the next topic here a little bit, but before we transition off Fernando Mendoza, I guess I'll ask both of you guys this. Just, plain simple terms, do you think after 23 years, I mean, you can say maybe Derek Carr was the Raiders guy. I know, Tyler, you'd probably say Derek Carr was the guy for the Raiders. But for the first time in a long time, would you say that the Raiders finally got their guy?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, me and Pete have been talking about Mendoza, off air months leading up to this point. I was not sold early on Fernando Mendoza as a football player, but Pete mentioned it earlier. I think the smarts and his worth ethic are the things that really kind of it makes you believe in Fernando Mendoza. You trust the person, you trust the guy, you think you believe in his ability to go and improve and get better. You already talked about the smart people around him, Clint Kubiak, Tom Brady. Like he's got guys around him to help him, succeed at that position. So yeah, I do believe that they finally have their guy, and I also do believe that Derek Carr was their guy, even though it didn't work out.
Okay. So everyone here is on the same page. We do think the Raiders got their guy, just kind of a little disagreement on how they should develop him and bring him up along. I'll be very curious. I'm kind of with Mike. I think the Raiders could be sneakily good this year, but some of those receivers are going to have to step up for them, and we'll have to see how that ends up playing out. But in this first segment here, we're talking about one quarterback. I want to transition to the other quarterback that went in the first round of the draft, a guy that I know that none of us are huge on, but Ty Simpson. The Rams took him at 13th overall, and Ty Simpson, if you don't know much about him, he was the Alabama quarterback last year, and Ty Simpson wasn't really viewed as an elite prospect. There were times in the season Alabama started the year hot. There was some talk about him going top 10 in the draft. Alabama kind of faded. Ty Simpson talk kind of faded. A lot of people thought maybe he should go back to college like Dante Moore and play one more year, especially with the NIL money, just get another year under his belt, get some experience. However, he did declare for the draft. And you can say what you want about him, but his gamble paid off because he went 13th overall in the draft. And so he will be playing behind Matt Stafford and Sean McVay's offense for at least 1 year. I think probably 2 years before Matt Stafford just won MVP. I think he probably has 2 years left in the tank. And so let's talk a little bit about the Ty Simpson pick. Mike Rose, I know you have passionate takes about this. I'll send it right over to you.
I mean, I just think this is such an egregiously bad pick. So many levels. The first being the Rams, who are like one of the most aggressive professional sports franchises probably that we have. Having a chance with a team with a Super Bowl window to be drafting as early as they did, to take a guy who, if he has to play this year, your season's basically over and everything has gone completely wrong, is just a completely insane thing to do, in my opinion. And then my other big issue is I just don't think Ty Simpson's a very good football player. talking about a guy who only started 15 games in college. It took him till his 4th year in college to start a game, which is never really an ideal sign. He had some moments last year
He
for
started the season
Alabama,
great.
but yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy he's not very big. I mean, he's listed at like 6'1" and 1/8, so he's not a real tall guy.
Not really
I
mobile.
mean, Pete mentioned the physical traits on Mendoza earlier. Ty Simpson doesn't have any of those.
He has none of them. I mean, doesn't have a great arm. He's not super accurate.
No.
I mean,
He moves okay. It's not like he's like Lamar Jackson out there.
He doesn't really wow you in any way, which is scary for a top 15
no.
pick.
And to me, like, this pick is, I said this, I feel like he's like a nepotism pick, honest to God. I mean, there were stories that came out about Les Snead, who's general manager of the Rams, and how he's friends with Ty Simpson's father, who's a college coach, and, you know, they were consulting with Les Snead about whether Ty should enter the draft, and Les Snead was like, yeah, he's a first-round pick for sure. And then for him to be a first-round pick by virtue of Les Snead taking him, it just screams like there's more going on here beyond the Rams sitting in a room and thinking, yes, Ty Simpson's our quarterback of the future.
Sean McVay also, and I don't know how much to really read into it, but their post-draft press conference, at least after the first round, Sean McVay didn't seem too thrilled about the pick either. So this might just be a Les Snead thing.
He talked about it on the ESPN broadcast
Yeah,
where he
that.
said, you know, he was more upset or he didn't want to offend Matt Stafford, which is, you know, completely fair. The guy's the reigning NFL MVP. But, like, again, you're drafting a guy, you have the MVP of the league. Like, it screams like Packers Jordan Love kind of vibes where it's like Aaron Rodgers is the MVP.
Yeah.
We could really use a guy to support him. What makes it
I was just going to say, I would just be really surprised if Matthew Stafford was offended by that pick because he's got to know, like,
he was
I'm
39
years old. He's already considered retiring, you know, last offseason when he had the back issue. So I would be very surprised. I don't think he would be offended by this.
Matt Stafford kind of strikes me as the chill guy too. I would be a little surprised if he was really offended by that. So Tyler, give us your take a little bit on the Ty Simpson pick if you want to dive into it.
I mean, the 15 starts, Mike already talked about it. I do have a stat here. Fewest college starts among first-round QB since 2020. I got 4 guys. Number 1, Anthony Richardson.
Not great.
13 starts. Number 2, Ty Simpson, 15 starts.
Okay.
3 and 4, they're tied. Trey Lance, 17 starts. Mac Jones, 17 starts.
Okay, so none of those great.
Experience in college is a very, very big thing. If you extend it to like the rest of the NFL, the milestone that you're kind of looking for is 30, which I believe Fernando Mendoza had like 38, somewhere in there. There's only 2 guys and they're big names that are 25 plus. Well, no, there's 3 guys. It's Bryce Young, which is still kind of early for him, but it's Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes, who we kind of talked about Pat Mahomes slightly earlier, had the entire year off, got to kind of sit. Josh Allen, same thing. Also, was it Tyrod Taylor?
Josh Allen sat 1 game, and then he started in the second game.
Yeah, but okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess kind of, but not really.
Yeah, but he had Brian Dable there, though.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely
kind of get along. So experience is a really big thing. He doesn't have that in college. We kind of said it again earlier. He started good in the season, really tailed off in the last 4 or 5 games. He got injured in the Indiana game. I just was not impressed. There was never a moment, especially when at the end of the season when the games were their biggest moments, that I was like, oh yeah, this guy's first round talent. He's like, Mike said, he's 6'1". He doesn't got the physical traits.
Not really mobile.
Yeah, there's nothing there that is just like, yeah, I like this guy as a player.
That's kind of one thing too, Tyler. If you're going to be 6'1", you got to be mobile. It's NFL, and he's just not really mobile.
And can I also add, you look at a lot of these guys that you're mentioning that don't have a lot of starts, right?
Yeah.
Almost everyone in this group got drafted because they have elite physical traits.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance, Josh Allen, Mahomes. We're talking about guys with elite physical skills. Ty Simpson does not have any of those things. No. He's not 6'5" and running a 4.5 like Anthony Richardson and throwing the ball 70 yards.
No. I mean, this is a dream scenario for Ty Simpson, in my opinion, to go there because, Sean McVay is just one of, if not the best offensive coaches in football. So you get to work with him, and then you get to sit behind the reigning MVP in Matthew Stafford. You have a really good roster around you, which again is what to Mike's point, which is why it's even more puzzling why they did this. But I will say this with the Rams. They did have 2 first-round draft picks, and they did move one of those for Trent McDuffie.
Yeah.
So, there's that. They at least did something there. So they kind of their whole thing was yeah, this is a free pick. We don't own this pick. We're just gonna, we're gonna take this quarterback and we're gonna develop him. If you want to look at some of the other guys that were available, for a team that's competing for a Super Bowl that I think could have immediately helped them, I was a Kenyon Sadiq guy. I think Kenyon Sadiq was right there. I think that's who Sean McVay wanted. If I had to be honest with you, I think that's the guy that Sean McVay wanted. I mean, Makai Lemon was there as well. I'm not as high in Makai Lemon, especially because of the Puka Nacua off season.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Puka Nacua's had a rough season.
Yeah. Listen,
Makai
I'm
Lemon
not a huge Makai Lemon guy, but for a team that pretty much lost last year because Konate Mumpfield was out running routes for them, and he couldn't get open, you would think maybe another skill guy could be useful so that your season doesn't come down to Konate Mumpfield. No shade to him, but
No, I completely get your point. And I want to transition a little bit too here to staying on topic with this. First off, let me preface this statement by saying I'm not a Ty Simpson guy either. I told Tyler before the draft multiple times, if he was available in the 3rd round, I think he could be a high-level backup in the NFL. But I would not want him to be the future starting quarterback of my team. However, I'll play a little devil's advocate here, even though it's not really my belief, but I'll try to paint the picture. If you're the Rams, you don't really have a lot of holes on the team. Mike just brought up they could use another wide receiver. That is an absolutely fair point. But the Rams are probably one of the most complete teams in the NFL, roster top to bottom if you look at them. They do have a 39, 38, however-year-old quarterback he is, probably 38, probably with only a year or 2 left in his career, you would think. I don't think Matt Stafford's playing much past 40. He doesn't really strike me as the kind of guy that wants to play to 45 like Tom Brady. And you have some of the best ownership in the NFL. You have a really good culture there. You have one of the best head coaches in the NFL. If in a weak draft too, where there weren't really a lot of home run prospects, if there was one team that could kind of afford to take the risk on Ty Simpson and try to get something on the back burner for their quarterback of the future, I would argue and say it probably is the LA Rams. So that's my little devil advocate take there on the pick.
I just completely disagree. I completely disagree.
Expand on that a little bit, Mike.
I mean, I understand the where you're coming from, but you're trying to win a Super Bowl. You have a 39-year-old quarterback. The window is closing. You do not need to. You should not be worrying about the next window unless everyone in the building is sitting around saying Ty Simpson is, the guy. And clearly, Sean McVay didn't look like a guy who was sitting around in that draft room thinking Ty Simpson is the guy. And I think another thing that kind of goes underrated with McVay, I know we all think McVay is one of the best offensive minds in football. I don't think anyone can even make an argument against that. But it's not like Sean McVay has this great track record of working with young quarterbacks. He came in with Jared Goff. I would say he definitely improved Jared Goff from where Jeff Fisher had him, but I think Jared Goff's a better quarterback now in Detroit than he was when he was with Sean McVay. And he got sick of Jared Goff, and he said, I need a veteran. He went and got Matt Stafford, and that's the only guy he's had since then. So it's not like we have this great history of Sean McVay, being a young quarterback whisperer since he's been in L.A.
Yeah. No, and Sean McVay back in 2022 kind of hinted at retiring, too. And I
don't think he's going to see Ty Simpson start. I really don't.
I always think about this, too. What if, Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are kind of tied at the hip, that maybe there is just strictly 2 more years left. I know Sean McVay just signed an extension in February.
Which means nothing. Let's be honest.
It doesn't mean anything. But let's just say there's 2 more years of Matthew Stafford. Does Sean McVay take a step away and, all of a sudden Ty Simpson's...
I will say that I trust the Rams ownership. I trust Stan Kroenke to make a good hire. I don't think the Rams are an organization. I mean, it's hard to replace Sean McVay. He's absolutely a top 5 coach in the NFL, and those don't just grow on trees. I'm not trying to underplay that fact. But I do trust the Rams organization enough to get another good head coach in there. It's not one of these franchises that we've seen, struggle to replace guys. It seems like every coordinator they hire has been the right guy for the last few years. It seems like every draft pick they've made has been the right guy. It's a well-run organization. There's no question about that.
No, you're 100% correct there. I just think this is a real question. And I also would say, if you're really concerned about the Matt Stafford timeline, there's maybe 10 guys right now that could come out in next year's draft and have a shot to be first round picks. There's a lot of more intriguing projects that I would be a lot here to have sit behind Matt Stafford than Ty Simpson, that have a lot more physical traits and have shown a lot more at the collegiate level already than what he has. So, if you're really nervous, like, oh, how many more years does Matt have? Like, I think next year is the year to do it, where there might be guys who fall into the later half of the first round, not because they're not talented, but because there's only so many quarterbacks that can get drafted. I could see 6 quarterbacks going in the first round next year, depending on who's willing to come out and what kind of season some of these guys have. So
Yeah.
it just feels like they messed up the timelines on multiple levels in my mind.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that entirely. So that's kind of our take there on Ty Simpson. Does anyone else have anything Ty Simpson related to add here before we transition off of that? Because I know this is kind of one of the more polarizing stories of the draft for sure.
I don't think Ty Simpson makes 17 starts in his career for the Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's hard to say. That's a really hard one to say, but it's certainly a possibility. I'll say this, unless, like Mike said, unless something happens to Matt Stafford, he's probably not seeing the field for the next 2 years. And
unbelievable clipboard holder.
And if he does see the field in the next 2 years, I do agree with Mike that's a problem for the Los Angeles Rams, especially this year. If it's a year 1 he sees the field, that's a rough situation to find yourself in if you're the LA Rams. So that is the end of the first segment. We're going to take a quick commercial timeout. Don't go anywhere because we're going to come back. We're going to talk about kind of the next polarizing pick in the draft, but stay tuned for that. We'll be back in a few.
Your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.
If you care to cover, we cover with care. Sterling tents and awnings for quality service and integrity. Sterling tents and awnings. No event is too big or small. For over 100 years we do it all. If you care to cover, we cover with care. Sterling tents and awnings.
And welcome back to 1st and 15 on the WBTA Sports Network. Pete Zehler alongside Mike Rose from the Daily News and Tylor Klien, a WBTA NFL analyst is what we're calling him. So the next pick we're going to talk about, I know you guys want to get into Jeremiah Love and the Cardinals because I have some hot takes about that you guys want to really dig into me for. We're going to get to that soon, I promise you. But first, I want to go with the number 4 pick in the draft, Carnell Tate, the Ohio State wide receiver going to the Tennessee Titans. This was kind of another polarizing pick. Not as controversial as Ty Simpson for sure, but this one, some people are questioning it, and he's a big wide receiver, played for Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State wide receivers have a phenomenal track record in the NFL. I mean, if you take an Ohio State wide receiver in the first round, you're pretty much guaranteed they're going to be good if you look at the last decade of picks in the NFL draft. However, this is a weaker draft, and, number 4 is a very high pick to be taking a receiver. Like, you take a receiver at number 4, that tells me that you think that is, like, going to be a top 5 receiver in the NFL, game breaker type of guy. And, I was looking back at the last few drafts. I looked at the last year's draft, the wide receivers taken early. Tet McMillan. I was higher on Tet McMillan than I was Carnell Tate. You go back to the 2024 draft. The first 3 wide receivers taken were Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. I was higher on all 3 of those guys than I was Carnell Tate. You go back to 2023, JSN I was definitely higher on than Carnell Tate. 2022, you got London Wilson, Olave. I mean, I think those guys I was all higher on. I'm not trying to do revisionist history here. This is just honestly like looking back at the history of the draft. You go back to 2021, you got Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. I think I was higher on all those guys too. The point I'm getting at here is that you look back at the recent years of the draft and the wide receivers taken higher. I think I'm higher on all those guys than I was Carnell Tate, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion for me. I think a lot of people were higher on all those guys than they are Carnell Tate right now.
Well, just to kind of stop you real quick.
Yeah.
I think you could do that with just about any position in this draft.
That's a fair point.
With recent drafts.
No,
especially at the top, is not a very great draft, which is why I don't necessarily have as much of a problem taking Tate and Love, a running back at 3, as I would in previous drafts. And if you look at the Titans offseason, like if you look at the guys that were there, like you might be like, all right, Arvell Reese. Well, they traded for Jermaine Johnson, who's an edge rusher. They signed John Franklin Myers. Like they spent some money in the offseason to address their defense. And I know that they're slightly older. You might want to go with a prospect. I think, Mike talked about it again earlier with the rookie contracts with quarterbacks. Go get your guy a weapon. It's not an elite draft for some of these positions at top. I don't necessarily have as much of a problem, but I do agree with you.
I don't
love Carnell Tate as much of a prospect as
pretty much everyone.
Pretty much everyone.
But I will end my point by saying is that I guess my point is if I'm the Titans, they have a lot of holes in that roster. You need a lot of things. I think I'm a lot higher on Arvell Reese as a prospect. I think I like Spencer Fano more as a prospect a little bit. Obviously, Caleb Downs. These are some guys that I like a little bit more. But to complete my point here, in the modern NFL, you need skill position players. You have a second-year quarterback now you're going to have in Cam Ward, and I can't fault them for trying to get him a number 1 receiver. So I will end my point by saying, despite everything I just said, I do understand the mental thought process there. Just as a prospect, specifically at number 4 overall, I'm not the biggest Carnell Tate guy. Mike Rose.
I do think it's convenient that when you were going year by year, you didn't give us your Kadarius Toney or Treylon Burks ranking
Obviously
compared to Carnell Tate. But that's all right. He just picked all the star receivers that got drafted. That's all I'm saying. Real convenient selection there. We didn't hear about where you had Quentin Johnston in your draft rankings. But it's all right.
I did see a stat during the sorry, Mike. I did see a stat
during the
draft that had, I think it was like 20% of first round wide receivers getting a second contract, like with that same team that drafted them. So I agree. Pete might have cherry picked a little bit there.
Well, I will preface this by saying too, that Carnell Tate
Yeah.
wasn't even my favorite receiver in this draft. I'm a Jordan Tyson guy. But back to Mike.
Yeah. So for me, Carnell Tate was my number 1 receiver in this draft. I do like his game a lot. You mentioned big. He ran a 40 time. That's kind of right in the range of where I look for wide receivers, because I do think there is a thing as being too fast in 40 times for wide receivers, which is a take we can explore another day probably. But he ran 4.53. That's right kind of where I like it for my wide receivers. I think Tyler hit the nail on the head, though. This draft just wasn't a very good draft. And so you look at a lot of these guys who, Carnell Tate probably is not the number 1 receiver in most years. He's probably not the number 4 overall pick in most years. But because of the nature of the draft class that we had this year, a lot of these guys are getting a little bit higher draft capital than they probably normally would, which maybe comes with, greater expectations than maybe some of these guys deserve. But, at the end of the day, I think as long as you can understand the nature of the draft class that we have, I think Titans fans will be happy with what they get out of Carnell Tate. He's a much better player than Treylon Burks, in my opinion. So that's at least a good starting point if you're a Titans fan out there. And I think he'll be a really good weapon for Cam Ward. I like what the Titans have kind of built over there with some of their young skill players. And, I don't really have a real issue with the pick. I think it was just a matter of how the draft class kind of shakes out this year.
I've enjoyed the Titans offseason. I do think Saleh out of New York, will have a better run at it. Brian Dable, we talked about him developing Josh Allen.
It can't be
earlier.
worse, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know the 2 New York guys going down to Tennessee. So, but yeah, I like Brian Dable as a development guy, as an OC. I was telling this to Pete before we hired Clint Kubiak that I wouldn't have hated the hire if the Raiders did it, especially with Mendoza in mind. That they signed Wendell Robinson. I think they've done a good job for Cam Ward this offseason. And I think Tate's just another great addition.
So I think you can add to that, too, by saying that I get the pick because now Cam Ward, you give him less of an excuse now. Now he kind of has that number 1 receiver, ideally. You've built around him a little bit. You've improved the offensive line to an extent. Now you can properly evaluate. I mean, you still have 4 years left in his rookie contract if you give him the 5th-year extension, and you have a good chance to really evaluate him now in the second year. Second year is not necessarily where you expect that quarterback to make the big step. A lot of times the third year, but this is certainly a chance for the Titans to get a better look at him now. Because, I mean, to be fair, last year the Titans wide receiver room was disastrous. I know some of those rookie late-round picks last year guys were high on, but he really didn't have a ton to work with last year. I mean, even the running back room, he had like 30-year-old Tony Pollard, who was good last year. I'll give Tony Pollard his flowers there. But it certainly, I think, we'll have a better chance to kind of see what's up with Cam Ward. Because I don't know about you guys, but truthfully at this point, I have no opinion on Cam Ward. I genuinely don't really know what to make of him. I don't know if he's going to be a good NFL starting quarterback or not at this point, but I think this gives us a chance to properly see that.
Well, when we talk about Mendoza, the things that we liked about Mendoza is his leadership and his work ethic. Cam Ward has both of those things, and again, I think the Titans have just done a really good job of putting him in a position to develop.
Yeah, I agree.
You got you hope that Tate turns into that number one wide receiver. I really like Wendell Robinson. He's also just familiar.
I think that's a good signing for sure.
He's familiar with Dable's system. We've already talked about it. Dable's known for being a developmental guy for the quarterback. This is it. This is what we'll see.
So
I will say I hate Wendell Robinson as like a football player, but I think he's a good piece for Cam Ward. But I genuinely like Robinson's game. It's just like one of the least efficient pass catchers I've ever seen in my life.
PPR league monster Wendell Robinson.
Yeah.
He gets you 13
because he catches 13 catches for 42 yards. I mean, it's unbelievable. The guy's never broken a tackle in his life.
Listen, he's not your ex receiver, that's for sure.
Genuinely, I know we're all big fantasy guys. I think in my entire life, I've never seen a player be so useless in standard and be so great in PPR as Wendell. Like, he has to be the greatest contrast of all time.
He's the fakest good fantasy football player of all time. I mean, it's just such fake production. He had a much better year last year. I will give him that. But like, the guy is just like the least. And by the way, just going back to the Cam Ward thing, just to steer back on path a little bit. Part of that wide receiver last room. Excuse me, that was awful. The wide receiver room last year, Calvin Ridley just basically being non-existent really hurt what they were trying to do. He took a pay cut to come back. I think they're hoping that he can still be their number one wide receiver in theory. And if that's the case, and you have him and Wandell, there's not as much pressure on Carnell Tate to have to walk in immediately and be, your go-to guy on the outside. Maybe by the end of the year, he becomes a guy who's, consistently being fed that number one kind of workload. But I think early on, they're going to lean on Wandell Robinson and Calvin Ridley.
So to kind of finish up this Cam Ward, or the Carnell Tate take, rather, I want to ask you guys this question. Who were you higher on as a prospect, Cam Ward or Fernando Mendoza? I'll tell you right now, Fernando Mendoza easily for me. I wasn't the biggest Cam Ward guy. He did kind of play a little bit better than I expected last year. I'll give him his dues. For what he had, I thought he played decent. How about you guys? Were you guys bigger on Fernando or Cam Ward, Tyler?
I don't know. I think they're really – I think as coming out as prospects, they're probably almost identical. Like, there's not anything that you – fall in love with. Again, you go to the whole traits thing. There's not like traits like that you love about either one of them, other than again the work ethic, the leadership. I'm gonna go with Fernando Mendoza just because of what he accomplished in college.
I agree with that.
I was significantly higher as prospect for Fernando Mendoza.
I agree,
but I was really impressed with what Cam Ward did last year, given the circumstances under which he was forced to play.
Okay, so that wraps up, I guess, Carnell Tate. That kind of transitioned a little bit to Cam Ward. So now we'll get into the Arizona Cardinals pick at number 3 overall. Jeremiah Love, my number one prospect in the NFL draft this year, Jeremiah Love. I'm very high on him. I think he has all, in a weak draft this year, I think he has all the traits you want in a modern NFL running back. Really good receiving back out of the field. You put him in open space, he's explosive. He's really good at breaking tackles. The guy's quick on his feet, quick acceleration on him. He checks all the boxes of what a modern NFL running back should look like, and I think that Jeremiah Love Just what he did at Notre Dame was so impressive over the last 2 years, especially in a split backfield with Jadarian Price, who also was a first-round running back, by the way. And
ridiculously.
Jadarian Price is explosive. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm probably a little biased here.
Unbelievably biased.
Jadarian Price is solid too, but listen, here's my thing with the Cardinals. I think you could say that in the offseason, out of every team, no team had one position group get better than the Arizona Cardinals did at running back. Last year at running back,
the Raiders might have an argument there at quarterback.
Last year at running back, the Arizona Cardinals were busting out Bam Knight, and I don't even remember the other guy. This year,
Mari DiMarcado.
him exactly. This year, they're going to be bringing out Jeremiah Love, Tyler Algier, and their third string still going to be Trey Benson. Listen, you can say what you want about him.
Still on the team.
But yeah, he's still
James
on the team.
Conner's still on the team.
Yeah, I don't think he survives the offseason, but maybe. We'll see. But Trey Benson, you can say what you want. My point being is that the Cardinals, they went from last year pretty much having the mom from the Goonies and the mom from Gilbert Grape to this year they got Madison Beer and Sidney Sweeney out there. It was a complete upgrade from them entirely on the running back room, and that's why I love the Cardinals. I don't think a single team got better at one spot as the Cardinals did at running back this offseason.
The Raiders did at quarterback.
All right, well.
The Raiders. Listen, I know you're biased with Notre Dame. I'm going to be biased with the Raiders here. Just go watch.
Can you at least admit to me that the
game.
Cardinals got significantly better at running back?
I mean, Trey Benson's not.
No.
That
No.
Knight and Amari, whatever his name is.
James Conner was hurt.
Yeah,
that is
Conner
not
was hurt.
James Conner. You mentioned Trey Benson. He was also hurt. It's the only reason Amari DiMarcado was playing. By the way, Amari DiMarcado I like as a player.
I'm
He has
against
a
him,
skill
but I don't want him to
set
be my
that
running
is
back.
applicable in the NFL. That I think Amari DiMarcado is going to be around for a few more years in the league. I like Amari DiMarcado.
All right, so
the Raiders linebacker group got better with Quay Walker.
This pick is absolutely ridiculous.
So every
by the
position
Arizona
group in the
Cardinals.
Raiders improved greatest in the NFL here. But
I mean, those two positions, the Raiders linebacking core and our quarterbacking group, are more improved than the Cardinals.
What about your offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, Tylor Klien.
Yeah, so just the entire Oakland Raiders got better.
Raiders improved a lot. The Oakland Raiders don't exist, but the Las Vegas Raiders improved a lot.
Yes.
But we got a little off rails. All right, Mike Rose, what's your take on the Jeremiah Love pick by the Cardinals at number 3 overall?
I mean, this pick is just so stupid. This is just such a dumb pick. It makes absolutely no sense on any level. You are such a bad football team. I mean, that defense last year was painful to watch at times in Arizona. There's so many difference makers on the board when you're drafting at number 3. And listen, we've mentioned ad nauseum that this is not a good draft, but there's still good players on the board at number 3. To take Jeremiah Love when you already have James Conner and you signed Tyler Algier and you spent a second-round pick 2 years ago on Trey Benson and Bam Knight and Amari DiMarcado are still under contract and more than capable of being a third running back in the NFL. They have 6 NFL running backs on their team. It's just completely asinine. It makes literally no sense. Now, I think Jeremiah Love's a really good player. I think he goes way too high. Just, again, gets vaulted up the board based on how bad this draft is.
Yeah.
But, and if you look at the history of running backs that go this high, they're pretty much all good players. But I don't think very many of those teams feel great about how things went, with that guy on their team. Like, if you're going to draft a running back, you better be ready to win football games. The Raiders took Ashton Genty at the top of the draft last year, and guess what? They picked number 1 this year. It didn't do a damn thing to make them a better football team in terms of wins and losses last year at the end of the day because they had a million other holes on the roster. The Cardinals roster is atrocious. Their defense is going to be horrific this year. It's probably the worst defense in the NFL as we sit here right now. And so to spend a number 3 overall pick on a running back when you have 5 NFL running backs under contract is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I do agree. Although I kind of said it earlier, I don't have as much of a problem with it in this draft compared to like previous drafts if they took him at 3 overall. I do really like him as a prospect, but I agree with Mike. You have so many holes. You have so many needs. Arvell Reese, I don't know if I'm necessarily the biggest fan of Arvell Reese. I
don't need to be to take
exactly.
him over a damn running back.
No,
I
say,
really like Sonny Styles.
I think the Cardinals, one place where they are solid on defense is that defensive line. You got Zaven Collins up there. You got Walter Nolan, who you drafted last year, who I'm very high on. I like Walter Nolan a lot. You got Josh Sweat. There's guys on that Cardinals defensive front. If there's one place where they're good, it is up front. And I would say if you're choosing between Arvell Reese and Jeremiah Love in the Cardinals position, I think I like Jeremiah Love. And I'll say this too.
There's guys, but there's not difference makers.
By the way, just quickly,
defensive front.
Does anyone here think that Carson Beck is like their future quarterback? Just quick answer. I think
no.
No, I don't. I don't think
Keaton Slovis has a better shot of being their future quarterback.
I completely agree. I'm not a Carson Beck guy myself. The point I'm making, though, is that now next year, Mike mentioned, there might be 6 first-round quarterbacks. All right, that quarterback's going to walk into a situation where you have Trey McBride at tight end, you have Maserati Marv at wide receiver, you're going to have Michael Wilson as your number 2, and you're going to have Jeremiah.
Deepest running back room in the world.
You're going to have the deepest running back room in the history of the NFL. No, I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
There's no reason for it.
You're going to get Jeremiah Love and Tylor Algier. Listen, they have Paris Johnson. They have a few guys in that O-line. My point being is that when they draft a quarterback next year, because they will draft a quarterback next year, I'd bet a lot of money that they draft a quarterback next year, that quarterback's going to be walking into a situation where he has the weapons and he's ready to roll.
Well, real quick, Pete, because, again, me and Pete were talking about this off air. We kind of included Mike in it earlier. Where are they going to be picking, Pete?
Probably like between 7 and 9, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, that's way too high. So for people,
they're going to be picking first.
For people listening and watching,
I think they're a 6-win team.
Me and Pete did a little side bet. A few years ago, I was not high in the Commanders. He was. They ended up picking second overall for Jaden Daniels. He owed me $20. We're doing that again with the Cardinals. He thinks that they can win 6 games this year.
I think they win 6 games.
I am completely with Mike. This
might
be the worst roster in the NFL.
I think 4.
Them and the Jets.
I think they're better this year.
No chance
them and the
this
Jets.
team's winning 6 games.
Yeah, no.
They were 3-14 last year. Where did they? Because they got a running back?
Listen,
that's what's going to get
them. They're going to be healthier this year, too.
Back?
Walter Nolan's going to be healthy on defense.
Listen,
Paris Johnson's going to be healthy on that line. I think that makes a difference for him.
Injuries happen in the NFL, right?
Yes.
Some of these guys are going to be healthier.
Yeah, some of these guys can get injured, and they got no depth.
That's true of any team, though.
Exactly.
All I know is that they just took a guy, number 3 overall, at a position where they have 2 former 1,000-yard rushers and a former second-round pick already on the depth chart. That is ridiculous. Yeah. Ridiculous.
And not to mention with the whole where they're picking, they are in the 3 of the teams that they're playing against in their division are 3 of the best teams.
I will preface this by saying I think they win 6 games. They don't win a divisional game. I don't think they'll win a divisional game next year. That is a
Can we pull up their schedule? What is the Cardinals' schedule?
The schedule's not out yet, but who are they playing?
But we know who
they got a
playing.
last place schedule, so I know they play the AFC West. They're going to play the Raiders at some point. I know they play the Jets. They play the Jets at some point in their season.
The AFC West has also got 3 really good teams.
Yeah.
The AFC West, I think, has 4 good teams.
Listen, I'm not high in the Raiders yet, but I'm trying to be optimistic.
They're better than the Cardinals.
Listen, I'm not saying that I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to make the playoffs, but I think the Arizona Cardinals are a middling 6-win team this year.
I'm not sure the Cardinals win 3 games. They may be worse.
They're beating the New York Jets. They're absolutely beating the New York Jets. I don't care what you say.
Are you sure?
They're going to beat the New Orleans Saints. They will beat the New Orleans Saints.
I don't think that's the Saints were a good football team last year.
The Saints were good at the end of that last year.
Saints were a good football team last year.
Showed some promise.
I think they beat the Raiders. I absolutely think they can beat the Raiders.
Okay, go ahead. Find 3 more for me. I look forward to this. This should be good.
Kansas City played a lot of close games last year. They could beat Kansas City.
Unless they're getting Kansas City when it's not Patrick Mahomes, then they're not beating Kansas City.
They could. There's a world where they beat Kansas City.
You're going to need to get scheduled off there.
They could beat.
That's 4. Go ahead. You got to find 2 more.
They could absolutely beat the Dallas Cowboys. I believe they can.
I mean, we've completely gone off the grid here.
Pete's reaching.
I think they beat the Dallas Cowboys. You're telling me that if the Arizona Cardinals,
these are road games,
what's the line on that game? Arizona Cardinals, Dallas Cowboys. What's the line on that game?
In Dallas, they're 7-point dogs, at least.
I agree with that, but that's a game they can win. That's a game they can win. That's a game they can win.
So according to Pete, Mike, any team can beat anybody on any given Sunday.
Well, they can. Listen, that's football. Any given Sunday. There's a freaking movie about it, man. Any given Sunday.
Yeah. It's because it's a narrative, not because it's real life.
By the way,
remember
the NFL does a really good job selling their product.
This all started off air when Pete sent us kind of a script for the show, and he wrote Cardinals reinventing themselves. And we both read that, and we're just like, what do you mean by that?
I think that they've made
they've
this.
reinvented themselves. They've gone from the second worst team in the NFL
All right, tell me
last
this,
year
tell
to
me
the
this,
worst
Mike
team
Rose.
in the NFL.
Do you disagree that next year when they draft a quarterback, that quarterback's walking into a very good offensive situation?
No, I think it's a good offense.
So you think that when they draft a quarterback next year, that quarterback is going to have a better situation?
Yeah, but I don't think Jeremiah Love did anything to make it that much better.
I think Jeremiah Love can be a top 5 NFL running back.
If they drafted Ty Simpson this year, he would have been walking into a good quarterback situation. What difference does it make?
I'm also really curious to see what a Mike LaFleur coach team looks like. What does his offense look like that's not, under Sean McVay or his brother? I'm just curious to see what that's going to look like.
I just want somebody to find me like the history of high drafted running backs and how many of these teams ever win anything.
The Dallas Cowboys, when they've drafted Zeke, they didn't win anything. They got the 1 seed in the NFC. I mean,
yeah, because they got Dak Prescott that year in the 4th round.
They got Carson Beck.
Talking about.
Listen, Saquon Barkley wasn't drafted by the Eagles, but they did win a Super Bowl with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah,
but he wasn't drafted by the
Eagles.
So they built their super team and then they signed Saquon Barkley because that's how you should operate in the NFL. Because running backs we realize Jeremiah Love's the highest paid running back in pro football, right?
Yeah,
right now.
No, I know by virtue of bringing him up the draft,
he is the highest paid running back in pro football.
I think he can be the best running back in football. I'm very high on Jeremiah Love. I think he can be. I think he has the intangibles to be the best.
But you could, if the Cardinals were so desperately needy at running back, which is just stupid to begin with, but you could have spent less money and signed Kenneth Walker. I don't know, the Super Bowl MVP. He was pretty good last year.
Yeah.
All right. We've all made our takes here on the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to transition now a little bit.
Or horrific at football. Terrible.
I think we've all made our stances clear. Looking at the time in the segment, I think we have enough time to get to the next player I want to highlight, and that is the 11th pick overall in the draft. The Dallas Cowboys trade up to get Caleb Downs. So I'll paint the picture for you. I was watching the draft at Tyler's house with our good buddy Kalen Profrock, and we just kept pretty much like since I'd say the Chiefs, we were saying, all right, Caleb Downs is going now. All right, Caleb Downs, the Commanders. Then the Saints were like, all right, Caleb Downs is going. Then the Browns, it's like, all right, the Browns could take Caleb Downs. And the Giants, I think Caleb Downs was the second best player in the draft. I know that you're very high on Caleb Downs, Tyler, and whenever the Cowboys traded up for that pick, though, we all were like, oh, yeah, Jerry Jones is 1,000,000% taking Caleb Downs here. There's no question in our mind, and, of course, they did. I will say I like this move for the Cowboys. I do think that Caleb Downs is the second best player in the draft. Is it a little rich for safety? Yes, but once again, we've beat this narrative to death that this is a weaker draft. Go get a very high-quality safety. I think the Cowboys were a team last year that showed they might have a little more gas left in the tank than people thought. And I think they added to a solid young defense by getting arguably the best defensive player in this draft in Caleb Downs. And I don't really hate what they gave up to make this move. Tyler.
So I got another stat. Since 2016, the highest drafted safety was Jamal Adams, 6th overall.
Okay.
This is kind of the range for safeties. It happened at 11 again in 2018 with Mika Fitzpatrick going to Miami. Past that, it's Kyle Hamilton at 14, Malik Hooker at 15, Carl Joseph back in 2016 with the Raiders at 14. So this is kind of the range for safety.
We don't count Raiders picks in here when we're talking about history of the draft.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree. But this is back to my point though. This is kind of just the range for safeties. I got no problem with the pick, or I got no problem with him sliding. Safeties just is not a valued top 10 pick ever for teams. It's just not. Kind of Mike Rose's opinion on running backs. It's almost kind of better to not take a safety in the top 10. There's a lot of guys out there that you can get. But I mean, this is a great pick for the Cowboys. I love this pick for the Cowboys. Again, Pete says it, his second best player in the draft. At the very least, he's a top 5 pick in the draft in terms of skill. So I think it was a really good pick. I think the Cowboys have had a good offseason getting Rashad Gary for the pass rush. Obviously at the deadline last year, getting Quentin Williams kind of goes back into this year, and now with Caleb Downs. So I think it's a really good pick for the Cowboys.
Yeah, luckily, my opinion on running back and safety is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I don't think you can draft guys at those positions this early. You don't take running backs. You don't take safeties. You should ultimately pay those guys over drafting them. Now, with that said, like the player, I think Caleb Downs is a really good football player. the Dallas Cowboys objectively got better on draft night by adding Caleb Downs to their defense. Do I love spending a premium asset on a safety? No. Do I love trading up to draft a safety? Also no. But at the end of the day, he's a good football player. He's going to make them a lot better. He's going to make some plays for them. I'm not going to be nearly as upset about him going at 11 as I am Jeremiah Love at 3 because, they took him at a little more reasonable of a spot. If Jeremiah Love went 11, I wouldn't have ranted about how ridiculous it was to draft him. And maybe if a team who actually needed a running back drafted him, I wouldn't have ranted as much as I did. But to me, it's a fine spot for Downs to go. Like you said, this is kind of the range where high-level safeties go. I think he's as good, if not better, than most of those guys that you mentioned as a prospect.
Yeah.
So definitely better than the likes of Malik Hooker and Carl Joseph. So.
Yeah. Keanu Neal.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, that's the fact that Carl Joseph even went that high is just absolutely.
I will say Caleb Downs is as high as I've been on a safety in a while, and like I said, I think that when the Cowboys traded up, it was pretty obvious that was the pick they were going to make, and they did. So I think we're all in agreement.
Can I just say, by the way, your top 2 players in this draft being a running back and a safety makes me vomit.
I think it speaks to the draft, though. I think it speaks to the quality of this draft.
That's horrific.
I don't think that it's not like this is a controversial take by me. I'm not the only one with that opinion of this draft.
Oh no, I get you. It's just what a disaster that is. And those are the 2 best players, freaking running back and a safety.
So we'll get to a couple more interesting points here. I'm going to save Arvell Reese for a little bit down the road. The Chiefs trade up for Mansour Delane. I don't have much to say about that. I have no problem with them giving up. I think it was a 3rd and a 5th to get their guy. I don't know. Does anyone have any takes about that? Or?
Well, that there's their replacement for Trent McDuffie.
Yeah, absolutely.
That they traded to the Rams earlier. That we
felt like they overpaid a little bit, though, to me. Like, was he really going to go before 9?
I have to imagine they knew something, or else they wouldn't have traded up.
I think we give NFL teams too much credit. These GMs just get it. Like, I was in the Bills' room this weekend where somebody asked Brandon Beane, because he also made a trade up for a cornerback on day 2, and somebody asked him, they're like, did you have an indication that somebody was going to take him before you guys could get him? And he said no. He just wanted to make sure they got their guy. Like, these guys just get itchy trigger fingers, and they just want to move up and make sure they get their guy. I don't believe that they had just like this great intel that he was coming off the board somewhere.
Well, listen, what the Eagles did to the Steelers, I don't know if either one of you saw that about the whole Lemon stuff. So, it might happen more often than we think.
That's a good transition.
Maybe, but like, I don't know that like in this spot, like Mansour Delane, like there wasn't a lot of buzz that those teams in that range were dying to get their hands on.
No, he was kind of projected as a later first-round pick. He was probably going to go in the first, but yes.
I mean, with the Jermon McCoy fall and the injury stuff there, maybe they were just.
I also think sometimes these teams, like when they have extra draft capital, like the Chiefs having 2 first-round picks this year, like they get more aggressive than they need to just because they're operating under the pretense of, well, we have all this extra draft capital, so who cares if we lose a little bit?
Well, that was, I mean, going back to the Ty Simpson stuff, that was kind of the Rams' mentality with the pick. They were
exactly,
like,
and it's a
pick.
terrible mindset.
Yeah.
All right, so
horrible.
Another pick, kind of maybe worth talking about a little bit. 8th overall, Jordan Tyson to the Saints. The Saints, they apparently are all in on Tyler Shuck from every report that I've heard. Now they're going to add Jordan Tyson to a room that already had Chris Olave. I don't hate that. You have a young rookie quarterback. You now give him what should be 2 elite wide receivers. I've already mentioned earlier that Jordan Tyson was my favorite wide receiver in this draft. I think he's the best route runner. He does have injury concerns, obviously. You got to note that. But Jordan Tyson, certainly a very interesting prospect. Does anyone have any takes about that?
You can go, Mike.
He was my number 2 receiver in this draft, so I think he went accordingly to where I would have taken him. I think it's a good fit in that offense. Sid Olave, I think they have kind of different set of skills. Needed to replace that, second wide receiver spot after moving on from Rashid Shaheed last year and sending him to Seattle at the trade deadline. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, I mean, they're all in on Tyler Shuck, who they may not be all in on, but I don't run the New Orleans Saints. So if they're all in, you're doing the right thing. Give him playmakers, see what he can do.
I mean, P has the Saints worse than the Cardinals next year.
I don't like Tyler Shuck either.
It's a good point. He has them losing to the Cardinals. So,
but
so Pete must hate this pick.
Yeah, Pete must hate this pick. Pete?
I like the
They
pick.
should
I don't like Tyler
traded
Shuck.
up and They should have traded up and taken Jeremiah Love instead.
I'm not a big Tyler Shuck.
And then they could have had Travis Etienne, Jeremiah Love, and Elvin Kamara.
I was just about to say that. I do like what the Saints have done around Tyler Shuck, kind of similar to the Cam Ward stuff. I think Kellen Moore did a good job. I thought you saw once Tyler Shuck was the starting quarterback, you kind of saw the Saints playing a lot better. The Travis Etienne signing, Elvin Kamara is still there. He's still reliable. I mean, he's not your number one every down back, but he's still reliable. Jordan Tyson addition. If Chris Olave can stay healthy, be really big for
he did last year. He did last year. I mean,
but yeah, I mean, I think the Saints have had a good offseason.
All right, so we're going to wrap up this segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about the team that might have been the best team in the draft this year in terms of improving. Stay tuned. We'll be back on 1st and 15.
When you walk into a home in Batavia, there's a good chance a piece of Max Pies furniture is part of that history. For over a century, they've been there, helping families furnish first apartments, first homes, and everything after that. Not a website, not a warehouse across the country, right here, local, family-owned. And right now, more than ever, local matters. If you've ever thought about stopping in, this is your moment. Max Pies Furniture, still here, still family, still Batavia, still where our customers send their friends.
And welcome back to the 1st and 15 NFL podcast. My name's Pete Zehler alongside the Batavia Daily News' Mike Rose and WBTA NFL analyst Tylor Klien. We are coming back, and as I promised, we're going to talk about a team that you might be able to argue was the best team in terms of improving in the NFL draft. That's probably going to be a debatable topic right about now, but I don't really want to break down one individual pick for them. I kind of want to talk about what they did as a whole, and that's the New York Giants, the New York Football Giants. Last year, I don't think anyone would really disagree that they were a young, talented team. There was a lot of things to like about the New York Giants. They obviously had a lot of injuries. We saw Cam Scatabo go down at one point. Malik Neighbors went down and missed the whole season. They were a team, obviously, that got pretty beat up last year. But there's a lot of promise there. They went and got John Harbaugh in the offseason as head coach, which I think most people are high on. They went and got Arvell Reese in the top 5. Arvell Reese, a player that a lot of guys had as the number 1 player in the NFL draft. He's top 5 player in my book, but certainly a really great edge rusher there, adding to an already pretty elite room with Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns. They upgraded their O-line, which was a problem. They went and got Francis Mayogo, I'm bad with names like that, but that they got him 10th overall, who was one of the top tackle prospects in the draft. And they got a guy in the 3rd round that I'm pretty high on, Malachi Fields, a very big receiver that can play on the outside.
Who's also from Notre Dame, by the way.
Let's note why he's high on him.
A good route runner, very good at the catch point. A guy that if he didn't have Riley Leonard playing quarterback for 2 years, there's a chance that he could have been going higher in the draft than he did. But talking about the New York Giants, I think they improved greatly, and I expect the Giants to be a playoff not a contender in the playoffs, but a team that will contend for a playoff spot. I think they'll make the playoffs next year. What's your guys' take on the New York Giants, Tylor?
I think the biggest thing for me is the coach. I think just having the stability and the culture that John Harbaugh will bring in to New York, I think he'll be able to handle New York and everything that comes with it. They have a very, very young roster. You said a lot of those names. Health is a big thing for them.
Absolutely.
For sure. You know, getting Malik Neighbors and Scatabo back is going to be big for Jackson Dart. But yeah, I mean, getting Arvell Reese at 5 is really good value, especially like you said, a lot of people had him number 1 and as an overall prospect going number 2 to the Jets or maybe going number 3 to the Cardinals, which they probably should have done. And then getting a tackle, beefing up the line on both sides of the ball. The Dexter Lawrence trade's tough. We kind of talked about it off air. They don't really got a lot of guys up the middle, but a lot of edge rushers. But yeah, I mean, it's just a young roster. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be ready to compete next year. Again, especially in a division with the Eagles, who I think are going to bounce back, maybe at least offensively. And the Cowboys we kind of talked about. I like their offseason as well. So, and then the Commanders are still, again, you want to talk about a team with health. The Commanders can stay healthy. They can always win that division too. So I don't know if I necessarily think I like the Giants to immediately compete and make the playoffs, but I like a lot of the things that they've done.
Mike?
Can I just circle back to you, Pete? Who are your NFC playoff teams next year that the Giants are making up?
Giants, Cardinals.
So,
what's going
I mean,
on
if we're
in your
going
NFC
division by
playoff
division,
picture here?
I'll be honest with you. My hot take is I think the Giants can win the NFC East. I think that they can absolutely win that division. I do think the Eagles make it, whether they win the division or as a wild card. I mean, you could say the entire NFC West, besides the Cardinals, makes the playoff. You could really argue that point if you wanted to. I will say for the sake of argument, man, that's a tough one to pick one of those teams to miss the playoffs.
So let's just do it like this. NFC.
Yes.
NFC West.
The NFC West, I'm going to go with Seattle and the Rams. I'll say San Francisco misses next year. They could have a lot of injuries and have a down year.
Okay, now let's
And the
just
Cardinals missed too?
Yes,
All
the
right,
Cardinals
just wanna make
miss,
sure.
yes.
now let's just go with the NFC East.
I'd say
those two
Philly and the
divisions.
Giants. Philly and the Giants.
Okay.
So I have no wild card teams left.
Okay. All right.
No, you got one.
The South, I'd say
No, you have none.
I'll
No,
take
you have one.
I'll take the Panthers, and the North. I think Minnesota is going to be good this year. I know Mike probably likes to hear that.
Well, they're not winning the damn division.
I think Minnesota. I think Chicago's a prime candidate to take a step back this year a little bit.
Really?
I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think they're still a good football team. I'm not saying they're going to be bad.
Wait,
but
who's this?
The Chicago Bears. I think they are a prime candidate to regress a little bit. The Packers, I feel like they've been waiting to regress for years. And I do think the Vikings with Kyler Murray are going to be pretty damn good next year. But so to answer that point, I think the Giants could sneak in as the last wild card. Obviously, all those NFC North teams are going to be capable of making the playoffs. I'm not saying that they aren't. I just think the Giants are going to be in that mix. I'm not saying they're a for sure lock playoff team. I just think they're in that mix into late December.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't like the Giants draft, I'll be honest. I don't like Malachi Fields very much at all
Okay.
as a prospect. I think he's the classic big body contested catch guy who's not a great separator. And my biggest sticking point with wide receivers is if you're a good contested catch guy, that means you don't get open enough. It should not be your selling point to me as an NFL wide receiver. I think Colton Hood is a nice addition in the second round that we haven't mentioned yet at cornerback at Tennessee. I like his game a little bit in their secondary, but where are you going to play Arvell Reese? This is, again, like I just don't understand what some of these teams are doing. I get like the idea of best player available.
You always
Best
have a
player
fresh
available.
body.
Best player available works a lot better when your team doesn't suck. They just don't know where you play him. Now they've continued to push this narrative that they're not going to move Kayvon Thibodeau, which I think is a load of crap, honestly. I mean, I just don't believe them at all when they say that. But, if they're keeping Thibodeau and they're going to move Arvell Reese as an off-ball linebacker, then you shouldn't be drafting him number 5. I mean, it just doesn't make much sense to
Kinda
do
like
that.
Back to the Caleb Downs talk. It's like you're drafting an off-ball linebacker at 5.
Right, and you're not only you're drafting an off-ball linebacker at 5, you're drafting like a out-of-position off-ball linebacker at 5. Like, it just doesn't really make much sense to me.
No.
The physical traits are there with him, no doubt about it, though. He does have the prototypical traits and size that you look for in a guy to be an edge rusher in the NFL.
You know what prospect and player would have been good for them at 5?
Who?
Love.
Jeremiah Love?
Yeah.
Well, listen, they got Cam Scadaboo, which, listen, I don't think he probably has a long NFL career the way he plays, but they have him. And
Does Cam Scadaboo know they still have Cam Scadaboo?
I don't know. He might
Has
not.
anyone checked on him?
Yeah. God bless that guy. But so I think overall that's kind of my take on the Giants. I like what the Giants did this offseason.
So you think the Giants won the draft?
I think you could argue that the Giants won the draft, yes. I think you could make
I think you could argue anything. I just don't know if it's true.
I think you could make a good argument that the Giants won the draft. Who else would you put in there? Like who do you like? Who else would you argue that won the draft?
I liked the Cleveland Browns draft a lot.
I agree with that. That's a fair one.
I really like the first 2 rounds of the Jets. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I really do.
He really likes the Jets draft. I think I like both those teams better than the Giants.
Those are fair arguments. Those are absolutely fair teams to talk about.
I don't actually even like Denzel Boston, who was Cleveland's second wide receiver pick of the draft, but I liked what they did in the first round. I think of the teams who make 2 first-round picks, I like Cleveland's 2 better than the Giants' 2.
Yeah. Like, with the Jets, at least in this first round, like, I really liked Kenyon Sadiq. I thought
you liked Omar Cooper a lot, too.
I loved Omar Cooper. I liked him a lot more than Casey Concepcion. But like going with the Cardinals, talking about setting up for next year's quarterback class, I think the Jets have done a really good job. They've been investing in that offensive line. They have a young offensive line. I like the Cooper pick. I like the Kenyon Sadiq pick. They have Breece Hall still there. They have Garrett Wilson there. I really like the Jets so far. What they've done. I don't like their head coach though. So
I don't like their quarterback either.
They obviously need it. Well, that's for next year.
I agree that I think they had a good draft.
You're not a Geno Smith guy?
No, but like I told this to Pete off air too. I think a lot of Jets fans were pretty mad about the Geno Smith signing, and I get it. He's awful, but the Raiders got the first overall pick with him, so you should at least be happy that you have a guy that can get you the first overall pick.
Geno Smith, certified tank commander.
Yeah, he's going to do exactly what he needs you to do: lose games.
Can I say I did like the Jets draft, but Kenyon Sadiq again was kind of similar to like the message I've been preaching all night. Why are we taking guys? We have other guys that we invested. Mason Taylor
that was
a
exactly
second-round
my
pick
point.
last year.
Yeah,
Mike,
Why
I said
we
that at the
drafted a
draft.
second-round tight end and then turn around the next year and say, we need a first-round tight end?
No, Mike, when I was watching the draft at Tyler's, I said exactly that sentence. I said, they just got Mason Taylor. He's pretty good, and everyone's pretty high on him. And this is a team with so many
like he had a
holes.
bad
Why
year.
are we taking Kenyon Sadiq?
Yeah. I was definitely shocked by it too, but again, when you look at what they did, with the Omar Cooper thing, and if you just like think forward to next year, with they're going to be taking a quarterback, it's setting them up. I don't think Aaron Glenn's making it past the season.
No.
They'll probably get an offensive minded head coach.
You don't think Cade Klubnik can be the future starting quarterback of the New York Jets?
I lost too much money gambling on him to have any hope.
To be honest with you, I didn't realize they took Cade Klubnik. I saw he went, but I didn't realize the Jets took Cade
up for
Klubnik.
him, I believe. Right, Mike?
I only knew this. Yeah, I believe they traded up for him. I only kind of knew that because we had TJ Parker in the Bills media room, and someone asked him about Cade Klubnik being selected in interdivision, and TJ Parker said, "You're not wearing the orange jersey anymore. I'm gonna run your ass over," basically. So that was kind of a funny moment. The press conferences on Friday, or on Saturday, I should say. But yeah, I think my favorite Jets pick was Eddie Dean. I know the size next to corner.
Yep.
I love the I don't think if you in the NFL, you just have to have a certain amount of ball in you that I can't quantify in any statistical manner, but he has.
Yeah, no,
I don't care how short he is.
I like I said I love their first two rounds. Past that, I don't really have much of an opinion on. I mean, a lot of those.
This
picks,
is a tough draft to really go that deep on.
Yeah, a lot of those picks, you're kind of just looking for development traits, anyways. But yeah, I'm not a Cade Klubnik guy. But the first two rounds,
Klubnik has probably lost me more money gambling
on
him than like I've made in the last year.
Absolutely, me too. I've lost way too much money on him.
And like, you know what's crazy about Cade Klubnik is like, every time you're out on Cade Klubnik as a college quarterback, like he brought you back in. Yep. Like that guy was a Heisman favorite at one point.
Yeah, last year.
He was going into the season last year. He was one of like the 2 or 3 Heisman favorites.
And then they lost 3 games in a row.
Let's talk a little bit about the other team that you mentioned, though. And I think it is worth talking about the Cleveland Browns, because I was very high in the Cleveland Browns draft, too. I thought the Browns had a very good draft. You talk about the Browns. Early in the first round, they get Spencer Fano. That immediately addresses a big need they had at tackle. I thought that was a great pick for the Browns. You go down further, they take KC Concepcion. I know, Tyler, you're not a big KC Concepcion guy. I wasn't at first, but when I thought the Bills were going to take him, I kind of talked myself into him. And my point being is I watched a lot of film on KC Concepcion because I really thought he was going to be a Buffalo Bill. And I can see why teams are high on him. I like his game. We'll see. That one's kind of to be determined. I'm not going to say I love or hate that pick either way right now. As Mike mentioned, they get Denzel Boston in the second round. It's funny, Denzel Boston's another guy I wasn't originally high on, then I thought the Bills were going to take him, and I started to watch more film and kind of talked myself into him a little bit. So they gave Shedeur Sanders 2 young receivers, which, I mean, who knows if Shedeur Sanders is even going to start.
I was about to say, they gave who?
Yeah, who was the starter?
And then you look, I mean, they take Emmanuel McNeil Warren later in that second round out of Toledo. I'm not going to act like I knew a ton about him. I know Toledo was a good football team the last couple of years, though, over the MAC. And this is just I feel like they filled a lot of holes. I don't know if they necessarily had the flashiest picks. I do feel like the Browns filled a bunch of holes. So to Mike's point, I do feel like you could make the argument that the Browns had the best draft. Their roster undoubtedly got better.
I will say on Concepcion, one thing I look for in wide receivers as a guy who plays a lot of dynasty fantasy football is early breakout is usually a very good indicator of a guy who's going to excel at the NFL level. As a true freshman, 71 catches, 839 yards, 10 touchdowns at NC State. And, kind of to break down part of the reasoning of why that early breakout matters, I guess, if maybe people are wondering why that's a good indicator. If you can excel as a young player against older players, that's more indicative of you being successful at the next level than maybe just beating up on college kids because you're in your sixth grad year, COVID redshirt year, and you go out and just, punk everybody because you're bigger and stronger and 5 years older than everyone. So that was kind of one data point that I really liked for KC Concepcion. Denzel Boston is another, I think, just kind of lumbering, can't really separate wide receiver. So we'll see how that goes. Also, I think there's absolutely no chance Shedeur Sanders is the starting quarterback for this team.
Who is Deshaun Watson?
It's got to be Deshaun Watson.
I mean, I agree. If Deshaun Watson's there and
if he can walk, you're paying him too much money not for him to play.
It's hard to say what he's going to look like at this point. It's been so long, but I'm not here to argue.
It can't be worse than Shedeur Sanders was, right?
Listen, I'm not a Shedeur Sanders guy. I don't think that.
I'm Pro Bowl quarterback Shedeur Sanders, but
quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Yeah,
Shedeur Sanders is going to be he's the first round pick to ever get drafted in the fourth round. He's going to be the first Pro Bowler to ever be benched.
We might have missed the most important Browns draft pick too. An absolute steal in the fifth round. They took Justin Jefferson. Wow. And I mean, we all know a lot about Justin Jefferson. This is a hell of a ball player they got in JJ. I'm sure Mike's probably conflicted about that one there, but yeah, they took Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, the linebacker out of Alabama, 6 foot tall, 223 pounds.
I just real quick on the Browns. I'm just not. I don't trust anything Andrew Berry does.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Like the fact that he still has a job and then they fired Kevin Stefanski to me is crazy. Like that he was the only one that went. Anything that he does, I just don't really like or trust. So I don't know.
Don't trust the guy throwing the ball. So
yeah,
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
regardless of which guy that the musical chairs lands on this year for them. Dylan Gabriel, I don't trust.
No.
Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson. Yeah. They want to call Snoop Hundley back out. Whatever they want.
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco maybe is available still.
Yeah.
Maybe Brendan Sorsby is going to be in the supplemental draft. Maybe they can grab him out of college and bring him in and let him start this year. Who knows?
So let's go to another big story of the draft. It's kind of the last, I'd say, big story of the draft that we haven't got to yet at this point. I mean, there's a couple, but this is kind of the big headline story. Tyler hinted at it a little bit earlier, but in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia Eagles trade ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers to take Makai Lemon at pick number 20. And that, I'd say, almost guarantees that A.J. Brown's going to be traded sometime in the next couple months. I don't know if either of you disagree with that, but I think that 100% signals that A.J. Brown's going to get traded. Lemon, obviously, was one of those big three receivers in this draft, along with Jordan Tyson and Cardinal Tate. Lemon obviously had some odd press conferences, I guess you could say, that may deterred some teams away from him. But Philadelphia takes him at pick number 20. There's no doubt that you could argue. I like Jordan Tyson, but a lot of people would argue that Makai Lemon is the best route runner in the draft. He's kind of like his comparison as a player. I've seen him compared a lot to Amon-Ra St. Brown. He kind of plays a similar type of wide receiver to Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's no doubt the talent is there with him. But it was kind of a big story because that was Pittsburgh guy. Everyone knew that was Pittsburgh's guy, and then Philadelphia trades ahead of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh to take him. And then we saw the Steelers use the entire clock on the next pick to kind of just make a panic pick. They ended up taking Max Anchor out of Arizona State, an offensive tackle. And certainly one of the bigger stories of the draft there. But I guess over to Mike. How do you feel about the Eagles getting the addition of Lemon? Another kind of smaller receiver like Devontae Smith, who we're assuming that's going to be their two receivers next year. It seems like A.J. Brown is out. And
they also traded for Devontae Wick, or debate. How do you say his first name? The Wicks. They traded for
Dontavian?
Dontavian, yeah.
Dontavian Wicks, yes.
Which, hey, he might be a guy.
He looked decent at times last year in Green Bay. But kind of what's your take, Mike, on the Makai Lemon pick there, and then the Steelers kind of panic pick afterwards?
Well, here's what I'm going to say on Makai Lemon. I don't like Makai Lemon. I think there's a lot of red flags in his profile. I'm going to just read you a couple of statistics here. For NFL drafted wide receivers who had at least a 1,000-yard season in college since 2015, the highest percentage of their receiving yards coming on slot fades. This group is number one is Taj Washington who was in the 2023 draft class. Number 2 is Jalen Hyatt. I think we know how his NFL career is going so far. Number 3 is Daz Newsome. Number 4 is Jacob Cowing. And number 5 is Makai Lemon. So that's not a great group to be a part of, I'm going to be honest. Now, the issue with that, the slot fade is kind of one of those plays in college that's kind of free yardage, especially if you have any sort of ability. Now, there's guys who have had a lot of slot fade in their profile that have been successful. Justin Jefferson was a guy who ran a lot of slot fades in college. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's a pretty good football player. You just mentioned him getting drafted this year by the Browns. So, I don't think we're completely burying it, but there's some definite issues in the profile for Makai Lemon. I'll give you another stat here. This is all receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft, with over 75% of their career routes coming out of the slot in the last 10 years. Elijah Moore, Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney, KJ Hamler, Paris Campbell, Rondell Moore, Tutu Atwell, Christian Kirk, and Makai Lemon.
That's not great company.
I mean, Christian Kirk is maybe the only guy in that group that you could call a hit, and Christian Kirk's barely a hit.
I don't know if I call Christian Kirk a hit.
Christian Kirk's barely a hit at this point. So, I mean, he was the highest paid receiver in the NFL at one point, so he did something right for himself at least.
Yeah.
So, all of that to say, I have some questions about Makai Lemon's ability to produce at the NFL level, especially if he's going to be asked to play on the outside with no A.J. Brown. Are they going to, stick him out wide? He's not going to be able to win in the ways that A.J. Brown can win. So I think that's a real concern. And as crazy as this sounds, I don't know that this necessarily means that A.J. Brown is getting traded. I think it's a high likelihood that A.J. Brown's getting traded.
Okay.
Let me just say that. But when you look at what Makai Lemon does well, it does not replace the production of A.J. Brown.
No, not at all.
No. Conceivable way. So, who's running A.J. Brown's routes in that offense? Because Jalen Hurts is a guy who hates throwing in the middle of the field. So,
yeah,
you need guys who can play on the outside. I don't know who that's going to be. Is it going to be Dontavian Wicks? I like Dontavian Wicks.
He is a little bit more big body. He has a case of the
dropsies.
But yeah.
Has kind of been his problem in Green Bay. He just drops way too many passes. But it's just a very interesting kind of situation happening in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah, their offense, the last 2 years, and they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, is even then when they won the Super Bowl, at the beginning of the season, there was a lot of question marks. Oh, no, what's going on here? And then Saquon Barkley saved their season. Last year, it just nothing ever looked right for them. And now they got a new offensive coordinator going into this year. The A.J. Brown stuff is definitely a storyline. Adam Schefter reported June 1st is kind of the deadline for that. Post June 1st is when that trade is expected. So, which I also think it would be really interesting if they do move on, because the projection is a first-round draft pick. And the Patriots, that 2027 draft looks really, really loaded. So I'd be interested to see.
Especially receiver.
That's a pretty pricey price to pay. There we go. For a kind of an aging wide receiver that has some off the field issues.
Yeah, right. Do you want A.J. Brown? Or do you want a lottery ticket on Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, and all those guys?
A.J. Brown does not have Stephon Diggs.
No.
A.J. Brown just gets grumpy every good NFL wide receiver in my lifetime.
He's a drama queen.
Yeah.
So I guess off the field issues.
If you're not a drama queen, you're not a good NFL wide receiver.
Yeah, off the field issues might not be the way to describe that. He's a drama
NFL wide
queen.
Receivers that are good are not dramatic.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown reads books on the sideline. That tells me all I need to know about A.J. Brown.
Yeah. Just to kind of go back to that Jalen Hurts middle of the field point, the lowest percentage of balls thrown to the middle of the field since 2021 for a season by a quarterback, Jalen Hurts has 3 of the top 4. So
doesn't surprise me.
He just doesn't throw to the areas under which Makai Lemon operates. It's a very weird fit to me. I think he would have probably been a much better fit in Pittsburgh. I'm sure the Steelers wish that they got Makai Lemon.
I said that I don't trust anything Andrew Berry does, the GM for the Browns. I do trust Howie Roseman, and if Howie Roseman's making this pick, he's got to see something.
Even Howie Roseman has had that guy took Jalen Reagor over Jeff.
That's
Jefferson,
true.
So
That is true. Maybe he just can't.
he also took J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Like his wide receiver, his wide receiver history is not the sharpest.
Yep.
If we're gonna pick one spot where Howie Roseman is not great,
that's fair. And I didn't like Makai Lemon.
Even the Devontae Smith pick was kind of controversial in that draft with the other wide receivers around. Obviously, that pick has worked out, but at the time, it wasn't like a consensus. That was a great pick. Really.
He's drafted some bad wide receivers. We just got to be honest.
Really, his best move with wide receiver was just kind of taking advantage of a Titans team that didn't know what they were doing at the time and getting A.J. Brown from them.
Jordan Matthews. You remember Jordan Matthews?
That guy used to be a beast. I like Jordan Matthews.
Jordan Matthews was never at any point a beast.
All right.
Never.
So there's a couple more topics we want to go on to. We probably have one more segment after this one. One more topic we'll get to in this segment, though. I think we can fit this one in here. Last pick of the first round, Seattle Seahawks. They take Jadarian Price at running back. Jadarian Price was kind of the 1B at Notre Dame last year. Price was, I don't want to call Jeremiah Love Thunder because Jeremiah Love was a speedy running back. I guess out of the two, he would be more of the Thunder to Price's Lightning. But Price was more of the speed back out of the two, I guess you could say. Very explosive running back. Can return kicks, can return punts, was one of the best punt returners in the country last year. I know it's not what you want to hear out of a first-round running back, but out of the backfield, too, he has pretty good vision, very explosive, and it appears as though that Jadarian Price is going to be Kenneth Walker's replacement. They're still going to have Zach Charbonnet in Seattle, so I imagine Charbonnet is going to be the Thunder, Price is going to be the Lightning. I don't hate the pick for a team that is pretty complete all around. I did have, this really, I promise you this isn't even my Notre Dame bias. I had Jadarian Price as the number 2 running back in this draft. It's really not that controversial of opinion. Jadarian Price is a very good running back, and I think that he'll be able to replace that Kenneth Walker will. I don't think he's as good of just, finding the hole and, hitting the gap like Kenneth Walker was. I don't think he's really as good at, getting those 3 or 4 yard carries. He's more of a home run hitter. But I do think that he will be a fine replacement for Walker in that offense where he's going to probably be the 1B to Charbonnet's 1A. I think you'll see Charbonnet get more carries next year.
Well, you want to know why Price was your number 2 running back?
Why?
Because this is a really weak draft for running back.
I agree completely.
This is ESPN's projections here, but ESPN's number 3 running back, Mike Washington, didn't go to the 4th round to the Raiders. Yeah. I mean, there was a few guys that were taken ahead of him, but again, it's just a really weak draft for running back. I honestly think that's why they take him here.
I don't think that's an indictment on Price, though.
I only think they took him is because they took him there because the class itself for running back was really bad. They just go and get the guy that they like. They don't have a lot of needs. This pick doesn't really do much for me. It's because, but losing Kenyon Walker stinks, and you got to replace him, and that's obviously where they went.
Mike?
Do we remember what I said about the Arizona Cardinals pick?
Yeah, there's a difference between 3 and 32.
This is also stupid.
Yeah.
Stop taking running backs in the first round. And by the way, this is actually worse than taking Jeremiah Love, and I'm going to tell you why. Because at least when you take a running back that early, usually they're all very good football players. I think the history of top 10 or top 12 NFL drafted running backs, pretty much universal hits, right? The Christian McCaffreys and Ashton Genty, I'm going to call ahead, even though he had a, okay year last year.
Not his fault.
Even like maybe the worst guy out of that group is like Leonard Fournette.
And he was still a good running back.
And he was a good player, right? So, you're not going to have any issues. When we're talking about guys getting drafted like near the end of the first round at running back, we're not talking about a real prestigious group here. We're talking about, guys like
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Rashad Penny.
Like Rashad Penny.
Yeah.
Like Najee Harris. Like Sony Michel.
Yeah.
I don't want that as my first round pick, and I just think it's just such a misuse of an asset to draft a running back in the first round. I think it's even worse when you're not at least drafting the guy who's, arguably a generational talent. Like, great, I get Jeremiah Love,
Yeah.
He might be the best player in this draft, even if it's a stupid location of the assets. At least he's an unbelievable talent.
You did say earlier.
Jadarian Price is fine.
You did say earlier, though, that you like if a team were to draft a running back in the first round if they're ready for it. The Seahawks are definitely ready for it, but
Well, no,
I'm not
I
the
said
biggest...
if you're going to do it, you should be ready for it,
Yeah.
but you should never do it.
Yep. And
That's
Bryce
the
also is
important
not
note.
necessarily
Never
the
do it.
prospect to do it for.
PSA to all NFL general managers, stop drafting running backs in the first round.
Well,
Just don't do it.
Well, listen, Pete, your Notre Dame bias can only get you so far.
listen, I like Jadarian
And I
Price.
also, by the way, he's my number 2 running back in this draft too.
Yeah.
I have no issue with, like, I don't think he's a bad player. He should have been the second running back off the board.
Yeah.
You just shouldn't take him in the first round. It's stupid.
I don't know, but if he is good in a weak draft, this is a weak draft. If he does turn out to be a good player, you get that extra year on the contract with him for cheaper, pick number 32. I don't necessarily hate it. Like, who else were the Seahawks going to take there?
I mean, Caden McDonald would have been a great pick for them.
Caden
Just beef
McDonald,
off that defensive line.
You could argue Caden McDonald. I mean, T.J. Parker, who the Bills ended up taking. Though those are just a couple of the names. But we've said a million times we beat this horse to death, that this was not a particularly good draft. And a team that just won the Super Bowl and lost the Super Bowl MVP, I don't really have a big issue with them taking the second best running back in the draft with pick number 32.
I saw somebody say on Twitter during the draft, and I don't remember who it was, so I'm sorry that I can't credit them, but I thought it was a great tweet. They said, the Seahawks are just taking Jadarian Price because he's used to coming out of the game at the goal line. He won't get upset about when they put Zach Charbonnet in to score all the touchdowns because he did it at Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love got to come in and score touchdowns.
No.
At least he's got that going for him.
Dynasty Fantasy Tyler would like that because I have Zach Charbonnet. I would like all those things.
But I will also say, just another note on Jadarian Price, first running back ever drafted in the NFL in round 1 or 2 to not have 125 touches in a season in college. So, I mean,
that's fair. That's
if
fair
you're
critique.
taking a guy in the first round, like, I want to be able to have him be at least a semi workhorse, right? Like, we don't know if this guy can even handle that much. You can look at it two ways, right? Lots of tread left on the tires, or the tires are not tested and you're going to spin out.
A guy that a lot of these same things were said about, and he's not as good of a prospect as this guy was. I'm not saying that, but a lot of these same critiques were said about Jahmyr Gibbs, who was kind of a similar style.
I mean, that's just an absolutely asinine comparison, by the way.
I'm not saying he's Jahmyr Gibbs, but he is that explosive type of running back that wasn't used a ton in college, and you like the
And
traits.
by the way, Jahmyr Gibbs objectively was a terrible pick where he went for the Detroit Lions.
I don't think the Lions regret it today. I don't think if you asked anyone in Detroit, they regret taking Jahmyr Gibbs.
Well, guess what? The Lions have yet to make a Super Bowl because they spent first-round picks on running backs and off-ball linebackers like Jack Campbell, who just had his fifth-year option declined because it's worth $22 million, and he would have been the highest-paid off-ball linebacker in pro football.
Jack Campbell is objectively a bad pick. I will give you Jack.
Jack. Also, Jahmyr Gibbs did have back-to-back seasons with almost 150 carries while also catching the ball a lot. Like, he had almost 200 touches his last year at Alabama. So, like, not really a Jadarian Price.
No, Jadarian Price is pretty uncharted waters. I will give you that. But I think in a weak draft, the tools were there. That's really
He's
all
the
I got
backup to the guy who went number 3 who shouldn't have went number 3. So he shouldn't have went 32. That's my take.
I would have liked T.J. Parker for the Seahawks.
I agree.
I think just defensive line, just keep adding to that. They lost a few guys too, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. I would have liked defensive line for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up here. I don't remember exactly who was on the board at that.
Well, some of the guys that went after was Stribling to the 49ers, Parker, McDonald, Colton Hood.
Well, Stribling's the worst pick in the freaking entire draft.
I didn't love that one.
Don't get me started on that one.
I
never even heard of the guy. I had to go do research on him. I go, who went 33?
Yeah. Those Terrell out of Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, I think R. Mason Thomas is a guy who would have made a lot of sense there. I mean, they rotate their pass rushers so much, like any of those pass rushers would have made sense.
I don't think there's like a distinct player that you can point to and be like, this was absolutely better than replacing Kenneth Walker.
Well, they could have just replaced Kenneth Walker. It's Zach Charbonnet. He's there. The replacement's in the house.
Yeah, but then if he gets injured, what do you do? What do you do if he gets injured?
Well, if Sam Darnold gets injured, should they have drafted? Okay. They should trade up and take Fernando Mendoza.
They should have taken Ty Simpson.
What are we talking about?
They should have taken Ty Simpson.
If he gets injured, you're going to roll out whoever you got in that building to play, and you live with the damn results.
All right. Well, we are going to end this segment here. We still have one more segment coming up. we got to talk a little Bills. Mike obviously covers the Bills. I'm a Bills fan here. We're in Buffalo Bills country. We're going to talk about that. Some later round picks that we like, and we'll preview next week's show a little bit. Stay tuned here I almost said after further review, but that's the wrong WBTA show. This is First and 15.
It's first and 15.
This portion of First and 15 is brought to you by Ken Barrett Chevrolet and Cadillac at 229 West Main Street in Batavia. Ken Barrett Chevrolet and Cadillac is a local dealer offering new and certified pre-owned Chevrolets and Cadillacs, plus repairs and collision services. When you need a dealership you can trust, you go to your friends at Ken Barrett. Find new roads at Ken Barrett. And welcome back to First and 15 in the WBTA studios in the heart of downtown Batavia. Pete Zehler, along with the Batavia Daily News' Mike Rose, and WBTA draft analyst Tylor Klien. So we've broken down a lot so far. One place we haven't gone, and let me reiterate too by saying that we did this show in college. Might I add, this show got nominated for Best Collegiate Sports Talk Show in college. I like to mention that quite a bit. We didn't win that award, but we were one of the Final Four in a little old GCC. That was pretty cool. But we were never really like a Buffalo Bills-centered podcast even then. It's just, even though that's our area, but naturally, I'm a Bills fan. We're in Buffalo country. We're probably always going to talk a little bit about the Bills.
Absolutely.
Mike's job is covering the Bills partially, so it's something that you're going to hear on this podcast. Probably the most in-depth team Mike has inside information on the Bills, so we're going to hear a lot about the Bills here. So we're going to go Bills draft now, and I'd call the Bills draft polarizing, I guess. That the fan base is pretty divided on the Bills draft, I would say. You have some people that are happy that they traded down. There wasn't really anyone strongly there in the first round that they really wanted to see the Bills take. But then on the other hand, you have a lot of people that are upset the Bills weren't a little bit more aggressive and didn't trade up, or at least stayed where they were and tried to get Concepcion, who was largely reported as their guy. So what the Bills did do is they traded down. Was it 2 or 3 times on day one? I think it was twice they traded down. 3 times. 3 times they traded down, and they ended up taking the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. They took T.J. Parker out of Clemson, a guy that I like. I think that's a really good pick for the Bills. I like him off the edge. I'm excited to see what he can do. But they trade down there, and I will say this about the Bills. The Bills started the NFL draft, I think it was 2 picks inside the top 150. After those 3 trades they made, they ended up with 5 picks, I believe, in the top 150. And for a team that is very strapped with the salary cap and they just kind of need young bodies, I don't necessarily hate that philosophy, although they did make some trades later on. I don't think they ended up with 5 picks in the top 150. And so I didn't hate the thought process, especially as someone who was pretty split on Concepcion. But I guess let's first talk about T.J. Parker. I like the T.J. Parker pick. I think he fills a need. I think he was probably, you could argue, the best available player where they took him. Mike Rose, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think TJ Parker's an interesting player because if we were talking basically a year ago, this is a guy who was probably a projected top 5, top 10 pick in the draft based on how productive he was his first couple years in college. He took a step back in terms of the raw production numbers this past year. But TJ Parker, when he spoke to us after he came into the Bills facility on Saturday after being drafted on Friday, he said that he felt really good about what his tape looks like last year. He felt like he improved in a lot of areas despite maybe not putting up the raw numbers that you would have liked to see out of a guy. And I think the upside is huge with this pick, right? The problem I think that a lot of Bills fans maybe have with it is he very much fits the mold of Brandon Beane edge rushers over the last several years, a guy who's kind of not a really speed guy off the edge. They've never really had a speed guy off the edge. He's very similar kind of power guy. They comp Brandon Beane comped him to Bradley Chubb, who's now on the Bills roster a couple of times over the weekend when talking about him. I think that comp makes some sense. If he ends up being Bradley Chubb, you probably feel pretty good about it. But I do think it leaves a little something to be desired for a Bills team that had some needs elsewhere. I thought Caden McDonald was going to be the guy at this pick. To me, he just would have been such a seamless fit into one of the Bills' biggest needs in terms of how bad their run defense was last year. But they go with TJ Parker. I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't think it's maybe not going to be a game-changing pick for them, I don't think. But I think he's going to be a solid NFL player for a lot of years.
Tyler.
It's interesting because going into this draft, I thought that the Bills should draft wide receiver.
Me too.
I was just like, draft wide receiver. I really liked Omar Cooper at the bottom of the first round, early second round, I guess, just depending on where he was going to land. So that's what I would have liked to have seen them have done. But at the same time, I also love what they did with the trades. There was a lot of value in the second round and the third round of this draft, and getting that second round draft pick. I did like it, but I don't know. I really thought they should have went wide receiver. They just didn't do it until what was it, the fourth round?
Yes.
Yeah, and I will just say I think trading back was objectively the correct choice.
Yeah,
I think they played the first day exactly how they should have, and I also don't think that KC Concepcion was ever that close to being a Buffalo Bill.
No, I didn't like.
Being completely honest.
Yeah.
Like I said, I kind of sold myself.
I know a lot
on
of people. By the way, I will just say, because I know you said, Pete, talking about like the idea of maybe trading up. That the Bills were never trading up in this draft. Like I just need people to erase that narrative from their brains. That was never a possibility.
No, I agree completely.
It was never in play. I don't think it was ever discussed. I don't think there's a guy that could have fallen to them that they would have even discussed it, honest to God.
Yeah, no, they were too salary cap strapped, and they needed more picks. They couldn't really afford to give up picks to move up. I agree with you completely there. So I will say, this will be my little Bills rant here, where I am frustrated that we didn't come away with a receiver higher than the fourth round, and here is why. I loved the DJ Moore trade. I'm very big on DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is going to have a big year in Buffalo playing with Josh Allen. I was a fan of that trade. Tyler can tell you, though, immediately after that trade happened, I told him, I said, this trade is great. I just really hope Brandon Beane isn't saying DJ Moore fixes absolutely everything at wide receiver and we don't need to do anything else. With the things that the Bills have done, I kind of have left this draft feeling like that's what Brandon Beane thinks, is that DJ Moore fixes everything and we don't really need to do anything else. Skylar Bell, I'll be honest, I didn't know a ton of him coming into the draft. I like his game. He gets good separation. He's a speedy guy. I think he can be a good receiver. My problem is, though, he's 5'11", and DJ Moore isn't a big guy. We had Shakir, who's obviously not a big guy. He's a slot receiver, and the Bills just don't really have that. Keon Coleman.
How tall is Josh Palmer?
Josh Palmer, he's not maybe 6'2". I don't think he's a particularly tall guy. He's probably taller than the rest of the receivers I just said. But we don't really have that. We have Keon Coleman, who I am absolutely out on. You will not find a bigger Keon Coleman hater than me.
Josh Palmer, 6 foot.
Okay, so Josh Palmer's 6 foot. I don't think Keon Coleman's that guy. Bills fans keep trying to tell me, Keon Coleman's going to turn it around. Until I see it,
the
I don't
Bills
believe
keep
it.
trying to tell us. The Bills keep trying to tell everyone that. I mean, if you sat in a room this week, I listened to Brandon Beane talk. He, unprovoked, on Friday, brought up Keon Coleman and said, we are not, this is not just lip service. We love what we have seen in Keon Coleman since he's been back in the building. So it's obvious that the Buffalo Bills believe in Keon Coleman.
The owner talked about it. Terry Pegula talked about it.
Yeah, this was months after, by the way. Terry Pegula pretty much threw him under the bus.
Yeah,
but the reality is, in the last several press conferences where Joe Brady and Brandon Beane have been in front of a microphone, any chance they've had, they've heaped praise at Keon Coleman and the fact that they believe in him, and their actions in this draft reflect, at least to some extent, and I can get into this a little bit later when we talk about Skylar Bell, but at least to some extent, that they do have some belief in him.
I get that. I just need to see it. I have not liked what I've seen the first 2 years out of Keon Coleman.
I'm out on Keon Coleman. I was out on Coleman.
I'm completely out on Keon Coleman, and I'll add to this point by saying, too, then there's Bills fans that they're trying to sell me on Tyrell Shavers, that, he might be the answer as the other guy receiver. I'm like, what are we doing? Tyrell Shavers, cool if he turns out to be a serviceable receiver, but I'm not putting my stock in Tyrell Shavers. I'm not convinced that he's going to be a good quality starting receiver for us. To wrap up my point here is I like the DJ Moore move, but it feels to me kind of like Brandon Beane said, all right, DJ Moore fixes everything. We don't really need to do everything else. And I get we took Skylar Bell in the fourth round. Taking a receiver in the fourth round doesn't really give me a big vote of confidence there that they're trying to really invest in the position, though, and especially a 5'11" receiver in the fourth round. And listen, Bell could be great for all I know, but I don't love what the Bills are going into the offseason with at wide receiver right now, even though I do like DJ Moore.
Yeah, I mean,
Here's what I'll say on that.
yeah, no,
Sorry
no,
to cut you off, Tyler.
no. I was just gonna say, like, for me, my belief with an offense, especially when you have just a no doubt franchise quarterback, give him as many weapons as possible.
Absolutely.
Because listen, I know the whole old saying is defense can win you championships, but in the NFL today, if you just score a million points, no one's stopping you. And I think they should have gone out and at least addressed that a little bit more this offseason. But I mean, DJ Moore is definitely a good start, but I don't know. I don't love the room as a whole.
So here's what I think, and I look at it from the perspective of, there's only so many spots on the field, right? The Bills are going to run a lot of multiple tight end stuff. They have DJ Moore, they have Khalil Shakir, right? Dalton Kincaid's probably going to be the third sector, so to speak, in
Yeah,
this offense.
absolutely.
And you talked a little bit about having kind of that bigger body wide receiver. I just don't think that's necessary in a Joe Brady offense necessarily. Especially the way Josh Allen plays. Josh Allen's probably he may be the worst 50-50 ball thrower like in professional football. As good as he is, like that is one area that he is truly not very good at. And Josh Allen is basically probably the best in the league at almost everything else.
Yep.
He does not throw a good 50-50 ball. It's just not his game, which is fine. So I don't have an issue with not drafting a big body receiver because it doesn't play into the skill set of your quarterback. I think you look at the guys they have, you want guys who can create space, you want guys who can get open. I think Skylar Bell fits that mold really well. I really liked Bell coming into this draft. I had him as a day 2 draft pick. My projections of it. So to get him at pick 125 overall, I thought was an absolute heist. You don't get guys who are that productive in the 4th round. It's just not normal. And you mentioned he's a smaller guy, but he also was one of the best contested catch guys in this entire draft class. He rated in the upper echelon in terms of contested catches. Just some Skylar Bell stats for you, Pete, where he rates in this class. He led the entire class in catches per game, target rate percentage, yards per team pass attempt, yards per route run versus man, and yards per route run versus zone. So we're talking about a complete wide receiver. He had a 65% contested catch rate, even being at 5'11". He's an explosive athlete. I think he's a guy who could come in right away and start on the outside as, the other receiver. And I think what it does is it gives you a lot of versatility with where you can line up, because I think Bell and Moore and Shakir can all play on the outside. They can all line up in the slot, and it allows you to be a little more diverse with what you're doing, because I think part of the Bills' problem offensively is they were so rigid in their roles with a lot of these guys, where they just, like, if a certain guy was on the field, you knew what that guy was going to do almost at all times. I think this gives them a little bit more creativity and versatility within the offense if that's who they choose to roll with those 3 guys.
I'll say my one thing with that, Mike, is I have watched, obviously, ever since we drafted him, I've watched a lot of skill on Bell, and I agree, or film on Bell. I agree with a lot of the things you said. He definitely has impressed me the more I've gotten to know about him. At the end of the day, though, he was still a 4th-round pick, and he was putting up those numbers playing the schedule that UConn played. And I need to see him do this in the NFL against NFL players before I'm going to be completely sold on him as a starting wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And once again, I'm a Bills fan. I want to believe in Skylar Bell. I want him to succeed. I've watched the film. I do believe he does have a lot of traits that you look for in a wide receiver. I just need to see him do that against a higher rate of competition than he was doing at UConn.
Yeah, and I will say, he did start at Wisconsin. There's some familiarity with new Bills defense coordinator Jim Leonard. Skylar talked about after he got drafted. He was very excited to be reunited with Jim Leonard. He did have, about 700 yards and 6 touchdowns in a couple of years at Wisconsin. Those numbers don't obviously blow you away, but that was as, kind of a freshman, a sophomore at Wisconsin. He still was a guy who was able to be productive. So I don't have, and, UConn does not play Murderer's Row by any extent in their schedule. I won't sit here and try and proclaim that fact, but they did play some, high major games last year. One of Skylar Bell's best games was against Syracuse. If there's any Syracuse fans out there, I think they remember Skylar very well.
I'm here.
Because he absolutely shredded them to pieces in that game. So he certainly, I think, has shown the ability to play against a higher level of competition, even, being at UConn where you're not playing against a bunch of, tough defenses necessarily all the time.
All right, well, we're going to switch off a little bit here. We talked about the Bills a good bit. We're going to talk about some of our – we have a couple things to talk about here. We're going to start out, though, by talking about some of our favorite deeper round picks in this draft. And Mike Rose, I know, has one that he's nipping at the bud to get into here.
I'll start.
So Tylor wants one. We'll give it right to Tylor.
I'll start just because I don't have as much as what Mike's got on his guy. For me, it goes to the Raiders with Jermod McCoy. And I think in terms of just straight value, like a guy that was supposed to be a first round pick, top 15, but he's not because of the injury history and concern. He tore his ACL at the end of the 2024 season, so he missed all of 2025. The whole thing with him is the surgery that he had. There's something going on with the bone where they think they got to do it again, and it could be a career-ending injury. But if all goes well, and that and he stays healthy and he's on the field, you're talking about immediately the Raiders got their best guy in the secondary because they have a very young secondary. They got a number one corner day one that you drafted in the fourth round. I think it's really hard to, in terms of value, to say that there was a better pick in the entire draft.
Man, for all the crap I got about being Notre Dame biased, you've said the Raiders have done like the best everything in this draft.
Listen, it's true. The Cardinals could have taken him here in the fourth round at number one overall.
There was no need for him to do that. They've already completely reinvented their team. They didn't need to do that at this point.
Yeah. But still, I think McCoy is the best value pick in the draft.
All right, Mike.
I will, just to say on McCoy, I like the value the Raiders got there. Not just to eliminate some of our Raiders bias here in our takes here today from Tylor. I want to talk about Eli Heidenreich, who I'm psyched about. Eli Heidenreich. First of all, maybe the best story of the entire draft. Pittsburgh guy, Navy man, gets drafted in the 7th round. He was in the building at the draft. Got to go out and be greeted by that Pittsburgh crowd. It was an awesome moment. If you didn't see it, you should go look it up because it was a really cool moment. Nah, it was a 7th round pick. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, it's just a really cool moment. But I'm here to tell you that Eli Heidenreich is a player. And not only is he going to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year as a 7th round pick, he's going to make an impact for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year as a 7th round pick. He is an elite athlete. I know it's crazy to think white running back out of Navy is an elite athlete, but he is. He ran a 4.44 40-yard dash. He had one of the fastest three-cone times by a running back ever in the history of the combine. He only trails Chris Rainey in that regard. He was just above Christian McCaffrey and Ray Rice in the fastest three-cone times at the combine by a running back in the last 25 years. So, an absolute freak. He had over 900 yards receiving last year on 50 catches, playing at Navy, by the way, who does not throw the ball at all. He had 941 yards on 51 catches. He scored 6 touchdowns. He added almost 500 yards on the ground last year as a runner. He averaged 4.36 yards per route run, which leads all players in the FBS last season, regardless of position. So that's not just running backs. We're just talking, players in general. He was that productive. And he also is a guy who is going to get in the lineup because he plays all 4 areas of special teams. He's going to be a day one contributor at special teams if he does nothing else. That's going to get him in the lineup. And I'm telling you, the Steelers are going to be looking around. They're going to say, we could use him as a fullback. He's actually a really talented blocker as well. You kind of have to be if you're going to play in a Navy offense, right? He is a guy who could split out and play some tight end. He's a guy who could play slot receiver. He's a guy who can carry the ball out of the backfield. He is as versatile a player as you're going to find. And I think as a 7th round pick, you're not going to find a guy who has a chance to be more productive immediately than Eli Heidenreich. And he has an awesome story. So really great guy to want to see succeed. My last stat on him, all time since 1977, so not all time, the top FBS yards per team pass attempt seasons all time. Okay? Demarius Thomas is number one. Rest in peace to him, an all-time great receiver,
Absolutely,
multiple-time
rest in
Pro
peace.
Bowler. Marvin Harrison Sr. is number two. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Number three is Hart Lee Dykes. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with Hart Lee Dykes' game, but he had a heck of a season in 1988 in college. Number four is Eli Heidenreich. Number five is Tim Brown, who is also in the Hall of Fame. So this guy was putting up numbers that are on par with all-time greats. He's athletic. You don't see guys this athletic go in the seventh round that are also this productive. So I think Eli Heidenreich has a chance to be instant impact and the special teams. Like, he's going to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
the fact that he can impact special teams means he's going to get a jersey on game day.
Yeah.
Even if right away he's not a guy that the Steelers are saying we want to use offensively. And all it's going to take is, guy gets nicked up. He gets a chance to make a play. He may never look back. Eli Heidenreich.
No,
My sleeper of the draft.
I like it.
I like that, Mike. So there's a guy that I'm going with that I'm surprised Tylor didn't bring up, and I'm going to go with this guy. I know it's a guy that me and Tylor were both high on, and that's Elijah Surratt. I really like Elijah Surratt as a prospect coming to the draft. He's a guy I wanted the Bills to maybe get in the later round. The thing with Elijah Surratt is he is just such a good contested catch guy. I know Mike doesn't like that trait in a receiver. Another thing, though, about him is he just adjusts to the ball so well. There were a lot of times, obviously we all watched a lot of Indiana last year. There were a lot of times where it almost just looked like Mendoza was throwing the ball away or a throw got away from a bad throw. And Surratt just in the red zone would make that right adjustment, contort his body, and get to the catch point to make just kind of an unexpected catch. He's just a very good contested catch guy. He's very good at adjusting to the ball in the air. He has good size, 6'2", a very physical receiver. He's good after the catch. He's really good on those shorter routes, like the slant route type of thing. He almost reminds me of a poor man's Michael Thomas, I would say. And I just think that Elijah Surratt is a guy that has the right tools to succeed in the NFL. He's not a flashy guy. I don't think he's ever going to be, a Pro Bowler or a big name in the NFL. But he's a guy that if you have him on your team, your quarterback is going to trust Elijah Surratt. He's a guy that, we saw Indiana late in games, third, fourth down, Indiana needed a play. Who did Fernando Mendoza throw to? He was looking at Elijah Surratt, and more often than not, Surratt didn't let him down. Kind of think about a Julian Edelman type of player, that scrappy kind of guy that will just get to the catch point in those big moments for you. And I really liked Elijah Surratt coming out of the draft. He was a guy I was hoping the Bills might give some consideration. We didn't, but overall, I really think Surratt was. I think he's going to succeed in the NFL. And he's a guy that if he's your number 2, number 3 receiver, you're pretty happy about that.
I'll tell you what, that Indiana wide receiver room is pretty good.
Omar Cooper too.
Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt, and then Charlie Becker, who is probably going to be a first-round draft pick next year as well. So they had some guys in that wide receiver room for sure.
No,
Can I just say, by the way, I'm not anti-contested catch. I'm anti-contested catch being
For Josh
your
Allen.
number one skill as a wide receiver.
Yeah. And
And I'm also anti-contested
kind
catch
of a
guys for
point I
Josh
didn't
Allen
get to
because he
there
sucks at
either
throwing
with
it.
Surratt too is he goes to an offense that's already pretty ready for him in Baltimore. I mean, he's just going to be an extra addition there, and that is one place where you could kind of say the Ravens needed that type of receiver. They already have Zay Flowers, who's obviously a phenomenal route runner, great all over the field, kind of that slot guy. Surratt's that guy over the middle that can make that contested catch. He's that guy in the red zone you can go to, where I think that's been a big problem for the Ravens the last couple of years is having that red zone threat. I think Surratt immediately becomes the Ravens' top red zone threat. Looked like Isaiah Likely was going to become that guy for a little bit. That really hasn't panned out. He's been inconsistent.
Rashad Bateman was.
And he's gone now.
Rashad Bateman, too. He was supposed to be that guy. He's been pretty hit or miss. I really think Surratt kind of files in immediately in that offense and becomes that guy that Lamar Jackson can trust in the red zone.
And Likely's now moved on to future playoff team New York Giants. So
that's all of our guys we liked in the draft. So
Can I give you one more guy before we get to the
absolutely.
next part?
By all means.
Because I think it was a really weird draft by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we talked about this off air.
Yep.
I think the second tight end they took, Tanner Koziel,
Yeah.
I think he is about to Mark Andrews, Hayden Hurst, Nate Berkshire.
Yep.
Hope I pronounced that right. The guy who they took in the second round, who has basically never caught a pass, and they took him in the second round. He's made like 12 catches in his career or something ridiculous. I mean, it's just obscene. But Koziel was a super, super productive player in college. A lot of those stats I was giving you about, Eli Heidenreich, those kind of yards per route run stats, Ozo ranks at the top of this class among tight ends and pass catchers very similarly in a lot of those numbers. And so he is a guy that I'm excited to see play. And despite being a fifth round pick, I think he is the best tight end in Jacksonville's draft this year.
All right, I like it. Tyler, you got something to add?
No.
All right, so we're going to transition here to picks that we didn't like in this draft. And so we all probably have that one guy we're looking at here. Tyler, I'll let you lead us off. What's a pick in this draft that you were just not a fan of?
We already talked about it earlier with the 49ers second-round draft pick. I like Mike when they drafted him. I was like, what? Who? I did not like that. I didn't really like the Jaguars draft as a whole. Again, Mike, I'm not even going to try to say his name, the tight end that the Jaguars took in the second round. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if I were to give like really my least favorite pick, it would probably be Jeremiah Love.
Okay.
At 3.
Okay.
But I don't have a lot of opinions on the later round guys. But yeah, the Jaguars draft, I know, like when you look at like consensus boards versus to where they took them, a lot of it was like reaches and just not really kind of just head scratching picks. But yeah, a running back at third overall when you have a million needs is probably just not the best pick.
Mike?
Yeah, I think speaking of consensus boards and guys who just think they're smarter, like John Lynch needs to stop thinking he's smarter than consensus boards. The 49ers would probably be on like their 9th straight Super Bowl win
Yeah.
if this guy would just draft good players instead of drafting really bad players so consistently in the like second and third rounds. Kalen Black in the third round was an absolutely absurd pick. And we kind of talked about with Jadarian Price going in round 1 that this wasn't a very good running back draft class. But like Kalen Black was a middle of day 3 guy to me. Not super explosive, kind of a smaller guy. He's not a pass catcher out of the backfield. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have like a weird fetish for mid-round running backs who are just not very good at football. They have taken a million of these guys over the years. None of them have worked really, except maybe like Elijah Mitchell, who like barely worked. So Kalen Black, I really didn't like, and then DeJon Stripling, kind of similarly at the top of the second round, didn't make a lot of sense to me from the 49ers. I think the 49ers just as a whole
Yeah.
are
49ers and
just
Rams.
off their rocker.
Or 49ers and Jaguars just did not have a great draft.
Those two teams just the Niners, genuinely, I just have no idea what they're doing. And I'll pass it over to Pete, but I'm just going to pull up a list of 49ers running backs that they've drafted in this regime just so we can kind of figure out where Kalen Black slots into this great group. But go ahead.
My pick, I hate to do it to Mike, but I was not a fan of Caleb Banks to the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, neither was I. So
I thought that was a little bit high for a guy with that many injury concerns and a guy that just really doesn't have – I mean, listen, you like the physical traits in him, right? He has the right size for a defensive tackle, and I get he's going to be playing in a defense that obviously is a very well-run defense. I think he'll fit Brian Flores' scheme pretty well. The biggest question, though, is can he stay healthy? And that's a really big question with him, a guy that has been injured multiple times, had a hard time staying on the field, and, you know, he was kind of projected to be a mid-second round guy coming into the draft, and the Vikings took him at number 17 overall. I don't hate the player, and once again, this was a weaker draft. If you like a guy, take a swing at him. I just felt like, 18? That was a little rich for Caleb Banks, I think. And the Vikings, a team with some needs on defense, I felt like there were safer picks available in the realm where they took Caleb Banks, and I just was not huge on that pick for Minnesota.
yeah, I thought that pick was terrible, if I'm going to be honest, as a Vikings fan. And I would say that's what happens when you don't have a general manager running your draft. So,
But, no.
Not great. So here's some great 49ers running back draft picks here in the Kyle Shanahan regime. There's a ton of great names on here. Trey Sermon is one that comes to mind, certainly, and he didn't work out very well. He was also a third-round pick. He went 88th. Kalen Black went 90th.
I like Trey Sermon coming out of college. I don't know why. I was a guy or a fan of him.
I watched enough Trey Sermon in Oklahoma to know that he had no business going in that part of the draft. Carlos Hyde was an early draft pick in the Shanahan regime. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. Harry and Davis Price, who I think is out of the league already.
Yeah.
That one was
And that was the year after they took Trey Sermon in the third round, and they took Darian Davis-Price in the third round. I mean, it's just like Isaac Garendo in the fourth round.
A guy I've held in
Jordan
Dynasty for 3 years.
James. Elijah Mitchell in the sixth was like the only one that wasn't like a super hard reach by them, and he was the most productive out of all of them. It's just a very strange thing that the Niners do, and I think they get too much credit for the fact that like they have such a loaded roster, and so we just can ignore. Like I think Bill Belichick got to do a lot of this, where he was like historically a really bad drafter as a general manager at the end of that run in New England. And because he was Bill Belichick and they still had Tom Brady and they were still winning a lot of games every year, we just kind of ignored it. But like eventually this stuff catches up to you. You cannot consistently burn draft picks.
I mean, for how
guys who are not productive.
For how poor it seems like they've drafted the last few years, for the amount of injuries that they had, especially last year, it's really crazy. Like how well they keep performing, and they get some of these guys to perform around the roster.
Yeah, just imagine what Kyle Shanahan could do if we drafted good
properly,
players.
Yeah,
I do agree with
Instead of
Mike that
bad
they can't
players.
keep getting away. In the words of Jesse Pinkman, they can't keep getting away with this.
Yep.
And I do think that it's probably getting to the point where it's going to catch up with them. That's part of the reason why I picked them to miss the playoffs a little bit earlier on the episode. I just think that they're aging, and they, like Mike said, they haven't replaced that talent. And they've gotten away with it for a while, but it's going to become a problem at some point.
Well, when you draft guys,
And I don't know how much say. Sorry, Tyler. I don't know how much say Shanahan has in some of these offensive guys that they draft, but they are really bad drafting offensive skill players.
Well,
like they're terrible at identifying skill players. And again, so part of what's getting them a pass, right, is how good the roster is, and then Brock Purdy.
I was
going to
say Brock Purdy. There he
holding
is,
this team
Mr.
up.
Irrelevant.
And
But,
A, they backpedaled into Brock Purdy. B, if you took Brock Purdy out of the 2022 draft class, that's one of the worst draft classes like this decade.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's absolutely downright horrific what the 49ers did in the 2022 draft.
Yeah, Brock Purdy bailed them completely out of that year's draft. There's no question
I mean,
about
I'm just going to read you this draft class.
Trey
Drake
Lance.
Jackson was in the second round pick. Trey Lance was actually the year before. It's even worse than the Trey Lance draft. It was Drake Jackson, Tyrion Davis-Price, who's out of the NFL, at 43 carries in his illustrious career. Danny Gray, third round wide receiver.
SMU.
Oh, no.
Danny Gray in his career has caught 0 passes. No, he's caught 1. Sorry. Caught 1 for 10 yards, and he also ran the ball once for 9 yards.
He's a beast.
Spencer Burford, offensive lineman.
Hey, the Raiders signed him this offseason.
Then we have cornerback Samuel Womack, who is still kicking around the league. He was a Jet last year. He played a game for the Jets and 5 games for the Titans. Then we have Nick Zekilji, another lineman. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Not really sure who he is. Kalia Davis, a defensive tackle. And then Tariq Castro Field, another cornerback who is no longer in the National Football League. And they ended it with Brock Purdy. So that's truly like one of the worst draft classes in years in the NFL. And they just happened to backpedal into the last pick of the draft, getting their starting quarterback. These guys don't know what they're doing. They should stick to trading their draft picks. That way they can stop burning them on the likes of Tyrion Davis-Price and Kalen Black and DeJohn Stribb.
It's crazy because of how similar, I guess I say similar just because of the coaching tree and Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, they kind of get connected to, but how different they are. The Rams have done so well drafting and replacing some of these guys, and the 49ers have done very bad at drafting.
And that's why the Rams won the Super Bowl, and the 49ers continue to lose Super Bowls.
Yep.
But, all right, guys, before we wrap things up here, does anyone have anything final draft-related they want to add here? We're going to have some chances in the upcoming episodes, too. Anything final you guys want to get in, or are we all set here?
Top drafting running backs in the first round.
Yeah, probably don't take a running back third overall when you have the worst roster in the NFL.
All right, so Jeremiah Love is a beast.
Arizona.
Yeah.
Wake up.
So That'll wrap up the, I won't call it the pilot. This is a return of First and 15. It's its debut here on a WBTA. Me and Mike had a show called Genesee MVP. I'm not considering this an extension of that show. I'm considering this an extension of First and 15 from our college days. And, yeah, it's great to be back with you guys doing this again.
This was awesome.
And, I'm looking forward to next week. Next week's show. So for the next few weeks, we've talked about it a little bit off camera, but the plan is we're going to break down each division. We're going to kind of go division by division. So next week, we'll pick a division. We're going to talk about that over the week, and we'll break down.
I think we should start with the NFC West so we can hear your Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? Yeah. That's good. We have a lot of 49ers takes, the Super Bowl champs. Yeah, next week we'll preview the NFC West. We'll go probably like a half hour on each team, breaking down their offseason, breaking down expectations, just really taking a deep dive onto each roster of these teams and giving you a full kind of inside look at all these teams. And that's what to expect in the next few episodes here. But absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube here, and we plan on continuing to do this. So stay tuned for more. And any final takes, gentlemen?
No.
All right. Well, thank you.
See you guys.
And, take it easy. See you next time on First and 15.
Started. It's First and 15.